When a broken father met a billionaire running from her past, neither expected that one moment of respect would destroy the lies threatening to tear his family apart. Ethan Cole stood in a courtroom 3 months from now, watching his daughter slip away. Claire Monroe sat beside him, not as the woman he met by accident, but as the only person willing to fight when everyone else had already decided he'd lost. But before that moment could save him, it first had to break them both. If you want to see how two strangers became each other's last chance, stay until the end. Hit like and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The cabin smelled like old wood and something faintly chemical, maybe cleaning solution that hadn't quite dried. Ethan Cole dropped his duffel bag on the porch and stared at the door, keys cold in his palm. He'd paid for 2 weeks. 2 weeks to figure out how to look like a man who had his life together, because in 43 days he'd walk into a courtroom and prove he deserved to keep his daughter. 43 days to become someone he wasn't sure he'd ever been. The door was already unlocked. He pushed it open slowly, every muscle in his body going tight. The main room was dim, afternoon light filtering through half-drawn curtains. A suitcase sat near the couch, expensive, black leather with brass corners. A woman's blazer hung over the back of a chair. On the kitchen counter, a half-empty glass of water and a phone face down. "Hello?" His voice came out rougher than he meant. Movement from the hallway. A door opening. She appeared in the doorway to the bedroom, and for a second, neither of them moved. She was younger than him, maybe 30, dressed in a white button-down and dark slacks that looked like they cost more than his truck payment. Her hair was pulled back tight, a few strands loose around her face. She had the kind of face people probably called striking. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin, eyes that looked gray in the low light. But what he noticed most was the way she stood. Shoulders back, chin up, like she was bracing for impact. "I think there's been a mistake," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but her hands were clenched at her sides. Ethan pulled the reservation email up on his phone, showed it to her without stepping closer. "Cabin 14, paid through the month." She didn't move to look at his phone. "I have the same reservation." "That's impossible." And yet here we are. He could see it now. The tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw was set. She wasn't just surprised, she was cornered, and people did unpredictable things when they felt cornered. Ethan took a step back toward the door. "I'll go talk to the front office. They can figure it out." Something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, but close. "The office closed at 4, I already checked." He glanced at his watch. 4:30. "Great." He dragged a hand through his hair, felt 3 days of travel pressed down on his shoulders. "So we're stuck. For tonight, at least." She moved into the main room, keeping distance between them, and picked up her phone from the counter. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. "I'm messaging the property manager. They should respond by morning." Ethan dropped his bag inside the door and looked around properly. The cabin was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a living area that bled into a galley kitchen, a couch that might fold out into a bed, but looked about as comfortable as sleeping on rocks. "You take the bedroom," he said. "I'll figure something out here." She looked up from her phone, eyes narrowing slightly. "You don't have to do that." "Yeah, I do." "Because I'm a woman?" "Because you got here first." He met her gaze, kept his voice level. "And because I'm too tired to argue about it." For a long moment she just looked at him, like she was trying to solve an equation that wasn't adding up. Then she nodded once and turned back toward the bedroom. "Thank you." The door closed behind her with a soft click. Ethan stood in the middle of the cabin and felt the silence settle around him like dust. He'd come here to think, to breathe, to figure out how to convince a judge that Emma was better off with a father who could barely afford rent than with grandparents who owned half of Fairfield County. He hadn't planned on a roommate, especially not one who looked at him like she was waiting for him to become a problem. The couch was worse than he'd thought. By midnight, Ethan had tried 4 different positions, and his back was screaming in all of them. The cushions were too soft in the middle, too hard on the edges, and something metal underneath dug into his shoulder blade no matter which way he turned. He sat up, ran both hands over his face, and stared at the dark ceiling. 43 days. 42 now, technically. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. He grabbed it, squinting at the brightness. A text from his sister. "How's the retreat?" He typed back. "Terrible couch." sharing a cabin with a stranger, living the dream. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. A stranger? Like a murderer stranger or a regular stranger? TBD. Very reassuring. Emma says hi. We made brownies. He smiled despite himself. Tell her I say hi back. Save me one. Already gone. She's your daughter. The dots came again, hesitated. You doing okay? He stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What was he supposed to say? That he woke up every morning with his chest tight, wondering if this was the day he'd find out he wasn't enough? That he kept running through worst-case scenarios in his head until he couldn't breathe? Yeah, just tired. I'll call her tomorrow. She'd like that. He set the phone down and lay back on the couch, one arm over his eyes. Somewhere in the bedroom, he could hear faint movement. Footsteps. The sound of water running, then stopping. The door opened. He sat up fast, heart jumping. She stood in the doorway in different clothes now, a plain gray t-shirt and black leggings, her hair down around her shoulders. Without the armor of the blazer and the tight bun, she looked different, younger, more uncertain. I can hear you not sleeping, she said. Sorry, I'll keep it down. That's not... She stopped, seemed to reconsider. The bed's a king. We could split it. Ethan blinked. What? You're clearly miserable out here, and I'm not going to sleep knowing you're suffering 20 feet away because of some outdated sense of chivalry. She crossed her arms, defensive. We're both adults. We can share a bed without it being complicated. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because we're strangers. Exactly. Which means there's no expectations, no assumptions, no drama. She tilted her head slightly. Unless you're planning to make it weird. I'm not planning anything. I'm just trying to be respectful. You can respect me by not destroying your spine on that couch and then acting like you did me a favor. He almost laughed. Would have, if he wasn't so tired. You always this direct? Usually more so. She turned back toward the bedroom. There's extra pillows in the closet. Build a wall down the middle if it makes you feel better. She left the door open. Ethan sat there for another 30 seconds, weighing his options. Pride versus practicality. The idea of another 6 hours on this couch versus the weird intimacy of sharing a bed with someone whose name he didn't even know. His back spasmed. Practicality won. He grabbed his bag and followed her into the bedroom. They built the wall. 4 pillows down the center of the mattress. A clear demarcation line neither of them would cross. Ethan took the left side closest to the door. She took the right, near the window. They got under the covers on their respective sides without looking at each other, like teenagers at a sleepover pretending they weren't nervous. I'm Claire, by the way, she said into the darkness. Ethan? Nice to meet you, Ethan. Likewise. Silence stretched between them. Outside, wind moved through the trees, a low whisper against the windows. The mattress was good, way better than the couch. His body started to relax despite the strangeness of the situation. Why are you here? Claire asked quietly. He turned his head, could just make out her silhouette against the window. What? At the retreat. People don't come to places like this unless they're running from something or running towards something. She paused. You don't seem like the meditation type. I'm not. So which is it? Running from or running toward? He should have deflected, should have said something generic about needing a break, needing to clear his head, but something about the darkness, about the fact that she was a stranger he'd never see again after tomorrow, made him honest. I have a daughter, Emma. She's 6. He stared at the ceiling, traced the outline of a water stain he could barely see. Her mom died 2 years ago. Car accident. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. He swallowed. Her parents, Emma's grandparents, they think I can't take care of her. They filed for custody 6 months ago. Hearings in 6 weeks. Claire didn't say anything for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. What do they claim? That I'm financially unstable, that I work too much, that they can provide better opportunities, better schools, better everything. He laughed, but it came out bitter. They're not wrong about the money part. I'm a mechanic. They own a pharmaceutical company. Money doesn't make someone a good parent. Try telling that to their lawyers. Another silence. He He could hear her breathing, slow and measured, like she was thinking carefully about what to say next. "Why did you really come here?" she asked again, softer this time. "Because I keep losing it in front of Emma. She'll ask me something normal, like what's for dinner, and I'll just freeze or snap. I don't mean to, but everything feels like it's balancing on a knife edge, and I don't know how to make her feel safe when I don't feel safe myself." The words tumbled out faster than he could stop them. "I came here because I need to figure out how to be the father she deserves, not the mess I've become." The darkness felt heavier after he stopped talking. He'd said too much, showed too much. She was going to think he was exactly what the grandparents claimed: unstable, unreliable, not enough. "My turn," Claire said. "What?" "You told me your story. Fair's fair." She shifted in the bed, the pillow wall crinkling between them. "I used to be an investigative journalist. Spent 5 years exposing corporate corruption, environmental violations, things people with power didn't want exposed." "Used to be?" 3 years ago, I published a story about a real estate development company. Turns out they had connections I didn't know about. Within a week, I was blacklisted. Couldn't get hired anywhere that mattered. My editor, someone I trusted, turned out to be feeding them information the whole time." Her voice went flat, mechanical. "So I stopped fighting. Started a consulting firm instead. Turns out when you know where all the bodies are buried, people pay well for your silence." "That's why you're here? Guilt?" "Survival." She laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. "I built something new. Made more money in 2 years than I did in my entire journalism career. Bought the silence I couldn't buy before. And I tell myself it was the smart move, the practical move. But sometimes I can't sleep because I keep thinking about all the stories I'm not telling." Ethan turned onto his side, facing the pillow wall. "So you're running from, not toward. Aren't we all? Emma's not something I'm running from. She's the only thing I'm running toward." "Then you're already ahead of most people." He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if she meant it or if it was just something people said when they didn't know how to fix a problem. But the tightness in his chest eased a little, and when he closed his eyes, sleep came easier than it had in months. Morning arrived gray and cold. Ethan woke to the sound of the shower running and lay still for a moment, disoriented. The pillow wall had mostly collapsed during the night, one pillow on the floor, another wedged between his shoulder and the headboard. Claire's side of the bed was empty, covers pulled back neatly. He checked his phone. 6:15. A message from the property manager apologizing for the double booking, offering to move him to a different cabin starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, which meant one more night. The shower cut off. He got up quickly, grabbed fresh clothes from his bag, and was pulling on a shirt when Claire emerged from the bathroom in a cloud of steam. She'd dressed already. Different clothes, but the same armor. Dark jeans, a cream sweater, hair pulled back again. The vulnerability from last night was gone, replaced by the careful control he'd seen when they first met. "Coffee?" she asked, like they hadn't spent the night sharing secrets in the dark. "Yeah, please." She moved into the kitchen, efficient and precise, found the coffee maker, measured grounds, filled the reservoir. Ethan watched her work, noticed the way her shoulders stayed tense even as she performed the simple task. "Property manager messaged," he said. "They can move me tomorrow." Claire's hand stilled for just a second. "That's good." "Yeah." The coffee maker gurgled to life. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and looked at him directly for the first time that morning. "Last night was fine," he interrupted. "We don't have to make it into something." "I wasn't going to." But she looked relieved. "I just wanted to say thank you for not being weird about it. You made a practical suggestion. I accepted, that's all." "Right." The coffee finished brewing. She poured 2 mugs, slid one across the counter to him. They stood there in the small kitchen, both holding their mugs like shields, and Ethan felt the weight of all the things they weren't saying. His phone rang. Emma's face filled the screen, a photo from her birthday, chocolate cake smeared on her chin, eyes bright with joy. "I should take this," he said. Claire nodded, moved toward the bedroom to give him privacy. He answered, and his daughter's voice poured through the speaker like sunlight. "Daddy, Aunt Kelly said you're at the mountains." "Hey, baby. Yeah, I'm at the mountains." "Are there bears?" "Probably, but they're more scared of me than I am of them." "That's silly. You're not scary." He smiled despite the ache in his chest. How are the brownies? Gone. I ate 3 for breakfast. Aunt Kelly said that's too many, but I think it's the right amount. Sounds perfect to me. When are you coming home? The question hit harder than it should have. 2 weeks, remember? We talked about this. That's so long. I know, but we can talk every day, and I'll be back before you know it. Promise? Promise. They talked for another 10 minutes. About school, about the new markers Aunt Kelly bought her, about the neighbor's cat that kept sitting on their porch. Simple things. Normal things. The kind of conversation that used to feel easy before everything got complicated. When he hung up, Claire was standing in the doorway of the bedroom, half hidden behind the frame. Sorry, she said. Didn't mean to eavesdrop. It's a small cabin. She sounds sweet. She is. He set his phone down, rubbed the back of his neck. She's the best thing I've ever done. The only thing I haven't screwed up. You haven't screwed her up either. Not yet. Claire moved back into the main room, sat on the edge of the couch. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did her grandparents wait 2 years? Why file for custody now? Ethan poured himself more coffee, took a long drink before answering. Because I was doing okay for a while. After Sarah died, they helped a lot. Too much, probably. Took Emma on weekends, paid for things I couldn't afford. I thought they were just being supportive. He laughed bitterly. Turns out they were building a case, documenting every time I worked late, every time I couldn't afford something, every time I looked like I was struggling. Then 6 months ago, I told them I didn't need their help anymore. Emma and I were figuring it out, and that's when they filed. Because you stopped playing by their rules. Because they realized they were losing control. Claire was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood, moved to the window, looked out at the gray morning. I know people like that. People who use money and power to reshape reality into whatever serves them. They don't care about what's right. They care about winning. Yeah, well, they're good at it. That doesn't mean you have to lose. He wanted to believe her, but belief was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. The hearing's in 6 weeks. Their lawyers have been preparing for months. Mine's doing this pro bono because I can't afford anyone better. The odds aren't exactly in my favor. Odds change. Not without something to change them. Claire turned from the window, and for just a second he saw something fierce flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful neutrality. You want to go for a walk? Clear your head? In the cold? Fresh air's good for perspective. Is that why you're here? Perspective? Among other things. She grabbed her jacket from the chair. Come on, we paid for this retreat. Might as well use it, chum. The mountain air bit at Ethan's face, sharp and clean. They walked in silence at first, following a trail that wound through tall pines and bare aspens. The ground was covered in old needles and patches of frost that crunched under their boots. Claire walked with her hands in her pockets, her breath making small clouds in the cold. How long have you been running your consulting firm? Ethan asked. 3 years, almost 4. You like it? I'm good at it. That's not what I asked. She glanced at him, something sharp in her eyes. No, I don't like it. But it pays for things that matter. Like what? Safety, distance, the ability to say no. They crested a small hill and the view opened up, mountains rolling away in layers of blue and gray, clouds hanging low over the peaks. Claire stopped, stared out at it like she was searching for something specific. I have a younger sister, she said quietly. Iris. She's 25 in grad school studying environmental science. Everything I wanted to do, she's actually doing. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself. When I got blacklisted, some of the people I'd exposed came after me. Not physically, but they made it clear they could if they wanted to. My apartment got broken into twice in 1 month. Nothing taken, just moved around. Messages left. I got my sister out of the city, paid for her to finish undergrad somewhere safe. Somewhere they couldn't find her. That's why you started the firm. To protect her. To afford protection, yes. And to make myself untouchable. She turned away from the view, started walking again. Money doesn't solve everything, but it solves enough. And when you felt powerless, having power, Even if it's hollow, feels like oxygen. Ethan followed her down the trail, processing. Does she know? Your sister? That I sold out? Yes. That I did it for her? We don't talk about it. Claire's voice went tight. She thinks I gave up, that I let them win, and maybe I did, but she's safe. She gets to do the work I couldn't. That's worth more than her approval. Is it? She stopped walking, turned to face him. What else was I supposed to do? Keep fighting and watch them destroy her too? I chose the lesser evil, Ethan. I chose survival. You'd do the same. I don't know if I would. Yes, you would. You are doing it right now. She held his gaze, unflinching. You came here to learn how to perform being stable so you can convince a court you're something you're not sure you are. That's survival. That's choosing the lesser evil over the greater truth. The words hit like a punch to the chest because they were true. That's exactly what he was doing. Trying to become a version of himself that could win, even if it meant hiding the parts that were broken. Maybe we're both cowards, he said quietly. Or maybe we're both just trying not to lose the things that matter. Claire turned and kept walking. There's a difference. They spent the rest of the day in careful orbit around each other. Claire worked on her laptop at the small kitchen table, fingers flying across the keys, occasionally taking calls in a low, controlled voice that never quite revealed what she was discussing. Ethan tried to read, failed, then went outside and chopped wood from the pile beside the cabin until his hands were blistered and his mind was quiet. When evening came, they made dinner together without discussing it. Pasta, jarred sauce, a salad from the vegetables Claire had brought. They moved around the small kitchen like dancers learning a new routine, passing utensils and ingredients, filling the silence with the simple sounds of cooking. You're good at this, Claire said, watching him drain the pasta. My mom made me learn before I left for college, said I'd starve otherwise. Smart woman. She was. He divided the pasta between two plates. She died when Emma was 3. Heart attack. No warning. I'm sorry, that's a lot of loss. Yeah. He set the plates on the counter, grabbed forks. Sarah used to say I collected grief like some people collect stamps, that I needed to learn to let things go. Did you? No, I just got better at carrying it. They ate at the counter, shoulders almost touching, and for the first time since Ethan arrived at the cabin, he didn't feel entirely alone. His phone buzzed, a text from his lawyer. Need to talk, call when you can. His appetite vanished. Claire noticed. Bad news? Don't know yet. He picked up his phone, then set it down again. My lawyer wants to talk. That's never good. You want privacy? No, I want to not call her back and pretend everything's fine. That's not going to work. I know. He picked up the phone again, stepped outside onto the porch. The cold hit him immediately, but he barely felt it. He dialed, and his lawyer, Monica, a woman in her 50s who believed in lost causes maybe a little too much, answered on the first ring. Ethan, thanks for calling back. What's wrong? The Prescotts filed a motion to move the hearing up. They're claiming new concerns about Emma's well-being require immediate judicial review. His stomach dropped. What new concerns? Emma's fine. They're claiming you've become erratic, that you left her with your sister for 2 weeks without proper notice, that this indicates instability and potential abandonment issues. I told them I was going on this trip. I cleared it with the custody agreement. I've called Emma every day. I know, Ethan, and we'll fight it, but the judge granted their motion. The hearing's been moved up to 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks? Not 43 days? Not 6 weeks to prepare? 3 weeks. Can they do that? His voice came out strangled. They just did. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you needed to hear. What do I do? Come home. We'll meet, go over everything again, tighten up your testimony, but Ethan, she paused, you need to be prepared for the possibility that this doesn't go our way. The Prescotts have resources. They have connections. They've built a compelling case that you're struggling financially and emotionally. Unless we can show significant evidence to the contrary, I'm her father. That should be evidence enough. In a perfect world, yes, but we're not in a perfect world. He hung up and stood there in the cold, phone clutched in his hand, feeling the ground shift beneath him. 3 weeks. How was he supposed to become someone different in 3 weeks? How was he supposed to prove he was enough when he'd spent 2 years believing he wasn't? The door opened behind him. Claire stepped out, wrapped in a blanket. They moved the hearing up, he said without turning around. 3 weeks. She didn't respond immediately, just stood there beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth through the cold. Tell me about her, Claire said finally. What? Emma, tell me something that makes you smile. He almost said he couldn't, that smiling felt impossible right now. But then a memory surfaced, clear and bright. Last month she decided she wanted to be a paleontologist. Spent an entire week digging in the backyard, convinced she'd find dinosaur bones. She found a stick, a rusty nail, and what she swore was a fossil but was definitely just a rock. He laughed, felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly. She made me label everything and put it in a shoebox museum. Charged me $0.25 for admission. Did you pay? Every time. She made 75 cents before she moved on to wanting to be an astronaut. Claire pulled the blanket tighter around herself. She sounds like she has you wrapped around her finger. Completely. He finally turned to look at her. I don't know how to do this. How to fight people who have everything when I have nothing. You have her, that's not nothing. It's not enough. Not against them. Claire met his eyes, and in the dim porch light, he saw something shift in her expression. A decision being made. A line being crossed. What if it could be? She said quietly. What? What if you had more than just yourself? What if you had someone who knew how to fight the way they fight? Ethan stared at her. You're talking about you. I'm talking about the possibility. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't know Emma. No, but I know what it's like to watch people with power destroy things that matter because they can. And I know what it's like to stand by and do nothing. She stepped closer, her voice low and intense. I told you I sold out, that I chose safety over truth. Maybe this is my chance to choose differently. This isn't your fight. Neither was exposing corporate corruption until I made it my fight. She held his gaze. I'm good at what I do, Ethan. I know how to find leverage. I know how to build cases that powerful people can't ignore. Let me look into the Prescotts. Let me see what they're hiding, because people like that are always hiding something. He wanted to say no, wanted to tell her this was his problem, his burden, his battle. But desperation had teeth, and right now they were sinking deep. If you do this and it goes wrong, it could blow back on you. Let it. Claire, I'm tired of being safe, she said, and there was something raw in her voice now, something that sounded like the journalist she used to be. I'm tired of watching from a distance. I'm tired of pretending money and silence are enough. They're not. They were never enough. So let me do this. Let me help. And maybe we both get to feel like we're worth something again. Ethan looked at her, the stranger who'd appeared in his life by accident, who'd shared a bed and secrets and was now offering to fight a battle she had no stake in. Every practical instinct told him to say no, to protect her from the mess that was his life. But the hope in her eyes looked like the hope he'd been missing. Okay, he said. Okay. She nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then she turned and went back inside, already pulling out her phone, already moving like a woman with purpose. And Ethan stood alone on the porch, watching his breath cloud in the cold air, and wondered if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the worst. 3 weeks. The countdown had started, and now he wasn't facing it alone. Claire's fingers moved across her laptop keyboard like she was conducting surgery. Precise, deliberate, no wasted motion. She'd set up at the kitchen table before dawn, and now, 3 hours later, the surface was covered in printed documents, sticky notes, and a legal pad filled with her tight handwriting. Ethan watched from the couch, coffee going cold in his hand. He tried to sleep after their conversation on the porch, but his brain wouldn't shut off. 3 weeks kept looping in his head like a broken record. 3 weeks to prove he deserved Emma. 3 weeks to become someone a judge would believe in. Tell me about the Prescotts, Claire said without looking up from her screen. Everything. Start with how you met Sarah. College. Sophomore year. She was in my economics class. He set his mug down, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. She was the only person in that room who made supply and demand sound like it actually mattered. We studied together, started dating, got married 2 years after graduation. And her parents? Didn't approve. I was a mechanic's son studying business because I didn't know what else to do. She was a Prescott. They wanted her with someone from their world. Claire typed something, eyes scanning whatever she'd pulled up. Robert and Diane Prescott. Prescott Pharmaceuticals. Net worth north of 400 million. Multiple properties. Board positions at half a dozen companies. She looked up. They have reach. I know. Did Sarah work for them? No, she was a teacher, third grade. It drove them crazy. He smiled despite himself. She said if she was going to have money, she wanted to use it for something that mattered. So she taught in underfunded schools and donated most of her salary to classroom supplies. How did they react when she died? The smile vanished. Like they'd been waiting for it. Not her death specifically, but the chance to step in, to fix what they saw as her biggest mistake. You. Me. And the life she chose. He stood, moved to the window. Outside, frost still clung to the trees, glittering in the weak morning light. The first 6 months after she died, I couldn't function. Couldn't work full-time, couldn't keep the house clean, could barely get Emma to school on time. The Prescotts showed up with money, with help, with solutions to every problem I had. I thought they were being kind. They were building documentation. Yeah, every time I accepted their help, every time I couldn't handle something on my own, they were taking notes. And when I finally got my head above water, when I told them Emma and I were okay, that we didn't need them managing our lives, that's when they filed. Claire pulled up a new document, scrolled through it quickly. Their petition claims you're emotionally unstable, that you've had multiple instances of anger in front of Emma, that you work irregular hours and leave her unsupervised, that your financial situation puts her at risk. She paused. How much of this is true? I've never left her unsupervised. My sister watches her when I work late, and I don't work late often. The financial stuff, yeah, I'm not rich, but we have enough. We're fine. And the anger? He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Ethan, I don't hurt her. I would never hurt her? That's not what I asked. He turned from the window, met Claire's eyes. I've yelled. Not at her, but around her. When things pile up and I can't, when everything feels like too much. I've punched walls, broken things. Always when she's not in the room, but she's heard it. She knows. Claire's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. How often? Not often. Maybe 5-6 times in 2 years. It's gotten better. I'm getting better. The Prescotts know about this? Diane was there once. Emma had spilled juice on something expensive of theirs, and I lost it. Not at Emma, at myself for bringing her there in the first place. But Diane saw me put my fist through their garage drywall. He laughed bitterly. I'm sure that's in their files. Claire made a note on her legal pad. Okay, we can work with this. How? I just told you I'm exactly what they're claiming. No, you told me you're human, you're grieving, you're under pressure, and you're self-aware enough to know when you're struggling. She looked at him steadily. That's different from being a danger to your daughter. We just need to frame it correctly. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's doable. She turned back to her laptop. I need access to their financial records, their business dealings, anything that shows they're not the saints they're pretending to be. How are you going to get that? I still have contacts, people who owe me favors, people who hate that I stopped digging, but hate the targets more. Her fingers flew across the keys again. Give me 2 days, I'll find something. Ethan moved closer, looked over her shoulder at the screen filled with corporate filings and news articles. You're really doing this. I told you I would. I know, but I don't know what I thought, that you'd wake up and realize how insane this is. Claire glanced back at him, and for a moment the controlled mask slipped. He saw exhaustion underneath, and something that looked like desperation. I need this to be insane. I need something to fight for that isn't just my own survival. Does that make sense? Yeah, he said quietly. It does. She held his gaze for another second, then returned to her work. Go call your daughter. I'll keep digging. He left her to it and stepped outside with his phone. The cold bit at his exposed skin, but he welcomed it, needed it, something sharp to cut through the fog. Emma answered on the second ring, her voice bright and impossibly loud. Daddy, guess what? What, baby? Aunt Kelly says if I'm good all week, she'll take me to the Science Museum, and they have a new dinosaur exhibit with a T-Rex that moves. That's amazing. Are you being good? Mostly. I had a time out yesterday because I wouldn't stop singing during quiet time at school, But Mrs. Patterson said my singing was very nice, just not at the right time. He smiled, felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. That sounds fair. When are you coming home? I miss you. The question hit like it always did, right in the center of his chest. I miss you too. But I'll be home soon, just a few more days. Can we go to the park when you get back? Absolutely. We'll go to the park and get ice cream after. Even though it's cold? Especially because it's cold, some ice cream tastes better in winter. She giggled, and the sound was so pure it made his throat tight. They talked for another 10 minutes about nothing important. School, her friend Mia's new puppy, a cartoon she watched that morning. Normal things. The kind of conversation that used to fill his days before everything got complicated. When he hung up, Claire was standing in the doorway, bundled in her jacket. I need to make a call, she said. Private. I'll walk. It's freezing. I'll survive. She was already moving down the porch steps, phone pressed to her ear. Ethan watched her disappear into the trees, her voice too low to make out words. She'd been like this all morning, focused, driven, moving with the kind of purpose he hadn't seen since that first night, like she'd found something worth waking up for. He went back inside and tried to work on his own testimony, the questions Monica had sent him to prepare for. But the words felt hollow on the page. How was he supposed to convince a judge he was stable when he barely convinced himself? Claire returned 20 minutes later, her face flushed from the cold, eyes bright. I have someone looking into the Prescott's business dealings, she said, peeling off her jacket. Specifically their pharmaceutical company. There were some allegations 5 years ago about drug pricing manipulation that got buried quietly. If we can find documentation— Wait, slow down! Ethan stood from the table. What allegations? Prescott Pharmaceuticals was accused of artificially inflating prices on a diabetes medication. Made it unaffordable for people without insurance. There was going to be an investigation, but it disappeared. No charges filed, no follow-up, just gone. How does that help us? Because if they used their money and influence to bury something that harmed people, it establishes a pattern. They're not benevolent grandparents concerned about Emma's welfare. They're people who use power to get what they want. Consequences be damned. That's a stretch? Maybe, but it's a foothold. She grabbed her laptop, pulled up a new document. I'm also looking into their custody petition itself. The dates, the claims, the witnesses they're planning to call. If there are inconsistencies, if anything doesn't line up— Claire. He said her name firmly enough that she stopped typing. Why are you doing this? I told you. No, really, why? She closed the laptop slowly, looked at him with those gray eyes that always seemed to be calculating something. You want the truth? Please. Because 3 years ago I had a chance to take down people exactly like the Prescotts. I had the evidence, the sources, the story. And I was scared. Scared of what it would cost me, scared of the backlash, scared of losing everything I'd built. So I hesitated. And in that hesitation, they destroyed me anyway. She stood, moved to the window. I don't get to undo that, but maybe I get to do it right this time. This isn't the same situation. No, it's better. Because this time I'm not fighting for a story or a career. I'm fighting for a little girl who deserves to stay with her father. That's cleaner. That matters more. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to tell her that she was pinning too much hope on this. That even with her help, the odds were still stacked against him. So he just nodded and let her get back to work. The day bled into evening. Claire made calls, typed furiously, filled pages with notes in handwriting so small he could barely read it. Ethan tried to stay out of her way, but the cabin was too small for real distance. He caught fragments of her conversations, legal terms he didn't understand, names he didn't recognize, a tone of voice that shifted between sharp and persuasive depending on who she was talking to. Around 7, she finally closed her laptop and rubbed her eyes. I need food, she said. Real food, not whatever we can make here. There's a diner about 10 miles down the road. Owner's a friend of mine from high school. You grew up here? Close enough. Next county over. He grabbed his keys. Come on, I'll drive. The diner was exactly what it looked like from the outside. Worn vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting, a menu that hadn't changed in 30 years. Ethan's friend Danny was behind the counter, same as he'd been since they were 18. He looked up when they walked in, face splitting into a grin. Ethan Cole, Thought you'd fallen off the earth. Just visiting? Taking some time. Danny's eyes flicked to Claire, curious. And you brought company. This is Claire. Claire, Danny. We went to high school together. Nice to meet you. Claire slid into a booth, and Ethan followed. Danny brought the menus they didn't need and coffee they didn't ask for. Usual for you? Yeah. And for the lady? Claire ordered a burger and fries without looking at the menu, and Danny wandered back to the kitchen, still grinning like he'd figured out something Ethan hadn't told him. He thinks we're together? Claire said quietly. Probably. Small town. People assume. Does that bother you? No. Does it bother you? No. They sat in silence for a moment, the diner's noise filling the space between them. Other conversations, the clatter of dishes, an old jukebox playing something country and mournful. Tell me about Sarah, Claire said suddenly. Not the facts, the real stuff. Ethan looked at her across the table. This woman who'd appeared in his life 4 days ago and was now tearing apart her own world to help save his. Why? Because I need to understand what you're fighting for. Not just Emma, the whole picture. He took a drink of coffee, buying time. Sarah was the kind of person who made you believe things could be better. Not in a naive way, but in a stubborn way. Like she refused to accept that the world was as bad as it looked. He smiled slightly. She taught 3rd grade in a school that was falling apart. No supplies, no funding, classes of 30 kids. And she loved it. Came home every day exhausted and frustrated and completely convinced she was making a difference. Was she? Yeah, her students sent letters after she died. Their parents brought flowers. One kid, Marcus, he was in her class for 2 years. He wrote that Mrs. Cole taught him that being smart wasn't something to hide, that it was okay to ask questions. His voice went rough. She was 28 when she died. Too young. Too much ahead of her. Claire reached across the table, put her hand over his. Just for a second, then pulled back. She sounds like she was extraordinary. She was. And I wasn't. That's what the Prescotts can't forgive. That their extraordinary daughter ended up with someone ordinary. You're raising her daughter. That's not ordinary. I'm barely raising her. I'm just trying not to screw it up. That's what all good parents think. Danny brought their food, gave them both a knowing look that Ethan ignored. They ate in comfortable silence, and for the first time since the hearing got moved up, Ethan felt like he could breathe properly. On the drive back, Claire's phone rang. She answered, listened for a long moment, then said, "Send me everything. I'll go through it tonight." When she hung up, her expression was different, sharper, almost predatory. "What?" Ethan asked. "That was my contact. She found something in the Prescott's business records. A pattern of settlements, lawsuits filed against Prescott Pharmaceuticals for price gouging, unsafe working conditions, environmental violations, all settled quietly, all with NDAs attached. How many? 12 in the last 6 years, totaling over $40 million in payouts." Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter. That's a lot of smoke, which means there's fire somewhere. She was already typing on her phone, pulling up documents. If we can get access to even one of those settlements, if we can show a pattern of the Prescotts using money to make problems disappear, the NDAs, won't that be a problem? For them, yes. For us, she smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. I know people who've been hurt by companies like theirs. People who signed NDAs because they had no choice, but who would love a chance to speak up if they had protection. Let me make some calls. Back at the cabin, Claire disappeared into work mode again. Ethan tried to give her space, but exhaustion was pulling at him. He lay on the couch, listening to the low murmur of her voice as she worked through calls, and at some point sleep dragged him under. He woke to darkness and the sound of the bedroom door closing. Claire's silhouette moved across the main room, and he sat up. What time is it? Almost 2. She sank onto the other end of the couch, looking wrung out. I've been on the phone for 6 hours. Did you find anything? Maybe. There's a woman, former employee of Prescott Pharmaceuticals. She filed a wrongful termination suit 3 years ago claiming she was fired for reporting safety violations. The suit was settled, NDA signed, but she's willing to talk off the record. Why would she risk that? Because her son died 2 years ago from complications related to a medication Prescott Pharmaceuticals manufactures. She thinks the safety issues she reported are connected. Claire's voice was flat, clinical, but her hands were shaking slightly. She has documentation she kept against the NDA terms, hidden copies of emails, internal memos. If even half of it is legitimate, it could destroy them, or at least damage them enough that a judge starts questioning their character. She looked at him. But it's risky. If we use this information and it backfires, if they can prove she violated the NDA, she could lose everything, and we gain nothing. Then we don't use it. Ethan, no, I'm not ruining someone else's life to save mine. We find another way. Claire studied him for a long moment. You're really willing to lose Emma rather than hurt someone you've never met? I'm willing to fight fair. There's a difference. Fair doesn't win custody battles. Maybe not, but I have to sleep at night, and I can't do that if I know we destroyed someone to get there. Something shifted in Claire's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're too good for this world. I'm really not. Sarah was lucky to have you. No, I was lucky to have her. And when I lost her, I lost the best part of myself. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm trying to find it again for Emma, but I can't do that by becoming someone I'd hate. Claire was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, we do it your way. No scorched earth. We find leverage that doesn't cost someone else everything. Is that possible? I don't know, but we'll find out. She stood, stretched, winced. I'm going to try to sleep. You should too. Claire. She turned back. Thank you. For all of this. For caring. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. We haven't lost either. She smiled slightly, then disappeared into the bedroom. Ethan lay back down on the couch, stared at the dark ceiling, and tried to believe that was true. The next morning brought rain, cold, persistent, turning the mountain into shades of gray. Ethan woke to the sound of it against the windows and Claire already at the kitchen table, laptop open, phone pressed to her ear. No, I understand the risk, she was saying, but if you can just look at the timeline, see if anything lines up with the settlement dates. Yes. Thank you. She hung up, made a note, immediately dialed another number. Ethan made coffee, brought her a cup. She took it without looking up. Have you slept? He asked. Some. How much is some? Enough. He sat across from her, waited until she finished her call. Talk to me. What are you finding? Claire pulled up a spreadsheet, turned the laptop so he could see. The Prescotts have a pattern. Every time there's negative press about their company, every time someone gets close to exposing something, it disappears within 48 hours. Stories get killed, journalists get reassigned, lawsuits settle quietly. How are they doing it? Money, mostly. Strategic donations to media companies, board positions that give them influence, legal teams that move fast and hit hard. It's textbook reputation management, just scaled up. She scrolled through the document. But there's something else. A name that keeps appearing in the background of these situations. Marcus Henley. He's a fixer, someone who makes problems go away for wealthy clients. They hired someone to bury their scandals. Not just bury, eliminate. There's a pattern of people who oppose the Prescotts facing sudden financial troubles, career setbacks, personal crises. Nothing provable, nothing direct, but the timing is suspicious. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. You think they'd come after you? If they knew I was involved, yes, which is why I'm keeping my name out of this for now. Everything I'm doing is behind the scenes through contacts who owe me favors. She met his eyes. But eventually, if we use any of this in court, they'll figure it out. And they'll retaliate. Then we stop, right now. I'm not putting you at risk. That's not your choice to make. Claire, I know what I'm doing. I've dealt with people like this before. And look how that turned out. The words hung between them, sharp and cutting. Claire's expression went cold. You're right, she said quietly. I lost before. I got destroyed, discredited, blacklisted. My career ended, my reputation was shredded, and I spent 3 years rebuilding myself into something I barely recognize. So yeah, I know exactly how it turns out when you fight people with unlimited resources and no ethics. She stood, closed her laptop with controlled force. But I also know what it's like to give up, to walk away because fighting was too expensive, and I'm tired of that version of myself. So if you want to surrender, fine, but don't ask me to do it with you. She grabbed her jacket and walked out into the rain. Ethan sat there, staring at the closed door, feeling like he'd just stepped on a landmine. He hadn't meant it as an attack, hadn't meant to throw her past in her face, but that's what he'd done. And now she was out in the cold because he couldn't control his fear. He gave her 10 minutes, then followed. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, rain soaking through her jacket, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't turn when he approached. "I'm sorry," he said. "That was out of line." "It was true. It was cruel. And you didn't deserve it." Claire finally looked at him, rain dripping from her hair, her face. "I'm not doing this to be a hero. I'm doing it because I need to prove to myself that I can still fight, that I didn't lose that part of me completely. But if you don't trust me, I trust you. I'm just scared that helping me is going to cost you everything again. What if I told you I don't care? I'd say you're lying." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're probably right. I do care. But I care more about this. About Emma. About you." She stopped, seemed surprised by her own words. "I don't know when that happened, but it did." Ethan stepped closer, close enough that he could see the individual raindrops on her face, the way her lips were pressed together like she was holding back more words. "We can still stop. Find another way." "There is no other way. You know that." "Then we do this together, but the second it starts to blow back on you, we pull the plug. Deal?" "That's not deal, Claire." She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Deal." They walked back to the cabin in silence, both soaked through, and Ethan tried not to think about how natural it felt to stand in the rain with her, how easy it was becoming to need her there. That afternoon, while Claire worked through more calls, Ethan's phone rang. Monica, his lawyer. "We need to meet," she said without preamble. "The Prescotts submitted their witness list. It's worse than I thought." His stomach dropped. "How bad?" "They're calling your former employer, 2 of Emma's teachers, and a child psychologist who's going to testify about the impact of your emotional instability on Emma's development." "I've never even met a child psychologist." "They hired one. Had Emma evaluated during one of their custody weekends." "You didn't know?" "No? How is that legal?" "It's murky. But they did it, and now we have to deal with it. Can you come to my office tomorrow? We need to prepare your counter testimony." "I'm 2 hours away." "Then leave now. This can't wait, Ethan." He hung up, found Claire watching him. "I have to go back," he said. "The Prescotts, they've been building this case deeper than we thought." "I heard. I'm coming with you." "You don't have to "Yes, I do. You need someone who understands what they're doing. And like it or not, that's me now." They packed quickly, threw everything in his truck. The drive back to the city was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Ethan kept seeing Emma's face, kept imagining her sitting in some psychologist's office answering questions designed to make him look bad. "They had her evaluated without telling me," he said finally, breaking the silence. "What kind of people do that?" "People who want to win more than they want to be decent." "She's 6 years old." "I know. This is going to confuse her, scare her." "We'll fix it. We'll show the judge what they really are." "With what? We don't have anything solid yet." Claire pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. "My contact sent the documentation from that former employee. I haven't looked at it yet, but we're not using it. We agreed. We agreed not to destroy her. We didn't agree to ignore evidence." She turned to him. "Let me look at it. If it's useful without putting her at risk, we use it. If not, we find something else." Ethan gripped the steering wheel, rain hammering against the windshield. "This is getting too big. Too complicated." Custody battles usually are. "I just wanted Emma safe. I just wanted her with me. And she will be. We just have to get through the next 3 weeks without falling apart." 3 weeks. The countdown felt like a noose tightening. They reached the city as evening fell, lights reflecting off wet streets. Monica's office was in a building downtown, 3rd floor, cramped and cluttered with case files. She looked up when they entered, her eyes going from Ethan to Claire with obvious curiosity. "This is Claire Monroe," Ethan said. "She's helping with research." Monica stood, shook Claire's hand. "Research into what, exactly?" "The Prescott's business practices, corporate history, anything that establishes character." "And you are?" "A consultant." Claire's voice was smooth, professional. "I have experience with high-stakes cases involving wealthy defendants." Monica looked at Ethan. "Can we talk privately?" They stepped into the hallway, leaving Claire in the office. "Who is she really?" Monica asked quietly. "Someone who wants to help." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Do you trust me?" Monica sighed. "I trust that you're desperate, but bringing in outside help without vetting them first is risky. If she's got her own agenda." "She doesn't. She's good at this, Monica. Better than good. She's found things in 4 days that we've been missing for months." "Like what?" "Settlement patterns. Business practices that show the Prescotts aren't the upstanding citizens they claim to be. Leverage." Monica was quiet for a moment. "Okay, but if this blows up, it's on you. Understood?" "Understood." They went back inside. Monica spread the case files across her desk, and for the next 2 hours they went through everything. The Prescotts' claims, the witness testimonies, the psychologist's evaluation that painted Ethan as emotionally volatile and Emma as suffering from the instability. "This is garbage," Claire said, reading through the psychologist's report. "Half of these observations are generic developmental concerns that apply to any 6-year-old. The other half are leading questions designed to get specific answers." "Can we challenge it?" Ethan asked. "We can," Monica said, "but we'd need our own expert. Someone who can evaluate Emma and provide counter-testimony. That takes time and money." "How much money?" $5,000 for a reputable child psychologist willing to testify." Ethan felt the number hit like a punch. 5,000 he didn't have. 5,000 that might as well be 50,000. "I'll cover it," Claire said. "No." Ethan's voice was firm. "Absolutely not. This isn't charity, it's investment in the case. It's money I can't pay back." "I'm not asking you to pay it back." "Claire." "Ethan, stop. Just stop." She turned to Monica. "Get me the name of the best child psychologist you know, someone with credentials the court will respect. I'll have them paid by tomorrow." Monica looked between them, then nodded slowly. "I'll make some calls." After Monica left the room to make those calls, Ethan turned to Claire. "Why are you doing this?" "Because Emma deserves someone fighting for her with everything we have. And right now, that includes my money." She met his eyes. "Stop making this about pride. It's not. It's about winning." "And after we win? What then?" "Then you raise your daughter, and I go back to my life. Simple." But nothing about her expression looked simple. Nothing about any of this felt simple anymore. Monica returned with the name, Dr. Sarah Lindholm, a child psychologist with 20 years of experience and a reputation for thorough, unbiased evaluations. Claire made the call right there, scheduled an appointment for Emma in 2 days, and wired the deposit before they left the office. Walking back to the truck, Ethan felt like he was drowning. "I can't keep letting you do this." "You're not letting me. I'm choosing to." "It's the same thing." "No, it's not." She stopped, turned to face him under a streetlight. Rain had started again, light and cold. "You need to understand something. I have more money than I know what to do with. Money I made by staying silent, by not fighting, by becoming exactly the kind of person I used to expose. This, helping you, helping Emma, this is the first time in 3 years that money feels like it means something." Her voice cracked slightly. "So let me have this. Let me use it for something that matters." Yishma, does. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't owe the world this kind of redemption, but the look in her eyes stopped him. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." They drove to his apartment in silence. It was small, a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Emma's drawings covered the refrigerator. Her backpack sat by the door. Everything about it screamed temporary, insufficient, not enough. Claire didn't say anything about the size or the state of it, just set her bag down and looked around like she was cataloging details. "You can take Emma's room," Ethan said. "I'll sleep on the couch." "Where will Emma sleep when she comes back?" "With me. We've done it before." Claire looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Show me the case files, everything you have. I want to go through it all again, see if there's anything we missed." They worked until 3 in the morning, spread across the living room floor with documents and notes and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Claire's mind moved like a machine, connecting pieces Ethan couldn't see, finding patterns in the Prescott's behavior that told a larger story. "They're scared," she said finally, sitting back against the couch. "All of this, The moved-up hearing, the aggressive witness list, the psychologist evaluation. They're overplaying their hand because they're worried you might actually win. That doesn't make sense. They have everything, except Emma's voice, except the fact that she loves you and wants to be with you. That's the one thing they can't manufacture. She turned to him. When the judge talks to Emma, when she has the chance to say what she wants, that's our advantage. That's where we win. If she's not too scared to speak, then we make sure she's not scared. We prepare her, we support her, and we trust that she knows her own mind. Ethan looked at this woman who'd crashed into his life a week ago and was now sitting on his living room floor at 3 a.m, fighting battles she had no obligation to fight. I don't know how to thank you for this. Don't thank me until it's over. I mean it, Claire. Whatever happens, thank you. She smiled slightly, tired but genuine. You're welcome. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we start fighting for real. He wanted to say more. Wanted to tell her that somewhere in the last week she'd become essential, that he couldn't imagine facing this without her. But the words stuck in his throat, too big and too fragile to speak out loud. So he just nodded, and they went to their separate spaces, and Ethan lay awake on the couch wondering when exactly he'd stopped being alone in this fight. 3 weeks had become 20 days. The clock was ticking. But for the first time since the Prescotts filed, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Emma came home on a Tuesday afternoon, bursting through the door with her backpack dragging behind her and her hair escaping from the ponytail Kelly had tied that morning. She saw Ethan and launched herself at him, all momentum and 6-year-old force. Daddy! He caught her, lifted her up even though his back protested, and buried his face in her hair. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and playground dirt and everything good he'd been missing. Hey, baby, I missed you. I missed you more. Aunt Kelly said you were coming home early, and I didn't believe her, but you're here. She pulled back, hands on his face, studying him like she was making sure he was real. Did you see any bears? No bears, just trees and mountains. That's boring. Very boring. He set her down, and that's when she noticed Claire standing near the kitchen, trying to look like she belonged there, but clearly uncertain. Emma's eyes went wide. Who's that? This is Claire. She's a friend. She's going to be staying with us for a little while. Emma looked between them, her expression shifting through confusion, curiosity, suspicion. Why? Because she's helping Daddy with some work stuff. Is that okay? Emma considered this, then shrugged. Okay. Do you like dinosaurs? Claire blinked, caught off guard. I don't know much about them. I can teach you. I know everything about velociraptors. They're my favorite because they're smart, and they hunt in packs. She dropped her backpack and moved closer to Claire, no fear at all. What's your favorite? I've never thought about it. You should think about it. It's important. Ethan watched Claire's carefully constructed composure crack around the edges as Emma launched into an enthusiastic lecture about different dinosaur species, their hunting strategies, and why the movies got them wrong. Claire nodded along, asked questions that seemed genuine, and somewhere in the middle of Emma's explanation of why T-Rex arms weren't useless, she smiled. A real smile, not the controlled one she wore like armor. Kelly appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. She looked at Claire, then at Ethan, then back at Claire. So this is the stranger from the cabin, she said. Kelly, this is Claire Monroe. Claire, my sister Kelly. They shook hands, Kelly's grip probably stronger than necessary, her eyes sharp and assessing. How long are you staying? Just until the hearing. I'm helping with the case. Helping how? Research, background work, whatever Ethan needs. Kelly's expression didn't soften. Ethan has a lawyer for that. Kelly, Ethan said quietly. No, it's fine. Claire's voice stayed level. You're protective, I get it. If I were you, I'd be asking the same questions. Great. So answer them. Who are you really, and why are you involving yourself in my brother's custody battle? Emma had stopped talking about dinosaurs, was watching the adults with a wariness that made Ethan's chest tight. He stepped between Kelly and Claire. Can we do this later? Emma just got home. Kelly held Claire's gaze for another beat, then nodded. Yeah, later. She turned to Emma. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get your stuff unpacked. Emma followed her aunt down the hallway, glancing back at Claire once with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. When they were alone, Claire let out a breath. Your sister hates me. She doesn't hate you, she's just careful. She thinks I'm going to make things worse. Are you? Claire looked at him, something raw flickering across her face. I don't know. I hope not. That night, after Emma was asleep in his bed and Kelly had left with promises to call tomorrow, Ethan and Claire sat at the kitchen table surrounded by documents. Dr. Lindholm had agreed to evaluate Emma the next afternoon. Monica had filed motions to dismiss the Prescott psychologist's report as biased and obtained without proper consent. And Claire had finally opened the files her contact had sent, the documentation from the former Prescott Pharmaceuticals employee. She'd been reading for an hour, her expression growing darker with each page. What is it? Ethan asked. Claire turned her laptop toward him. The screen showed an internal email chain, dates from 4 years ago. They knew. The safety violations that employee reported, they knew the medication was causing adverse reactions in clinical trials, and they released it anyway. Ethan scanned the emails, his stomach turning. How many people were affected? At least 40 documented cases of severe reactions, 3 deaths. She pulled up another file. And they buried it. Paid off the families, sealed the records, kept selling the drug for another 2 years before quietly reformulating it. This is criminal. It's criminal. But it's also sealed under multiple NDAs protected by settlements. And if we try to use it in your custody case, the Prescotts will bury us in legal action before we get through the first hearing. Then what's the point of having it? The point is knowing who they really are, knowing what they're capable of. Claire closed the laptop. But you're right. We can't use this directly. It's too risky, and it doesn't technically relate to their fitness as guardians. So, we're back where we started. Not exactly. This establishes motive. They're not fighting for Emma because they love her or because they think you're unfit. They're fighting because they need to control the narrative. Because if they lose custody to a mechanic, it makes them look weak. And people like the Prescotts can't afford to look weak. Ethan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. I don't care about their motives. I care about keeping Emma. I know, and we will. But understanding why they're doing this helps us predict what they'll do next. What do you think they'll do next? Claire was quiet for a moment, staring at the dark window. They'll come after you personally, not just your finances or your work schedule. They'll dig into your past, your relationships, anything they can twist to make you look unstable or dangerous. There's nothing to find. I've been boring my entire life. Everyone has something. An ex who'll say the wrong thing, a friend who misremembers a story, a moment of weakness that looks worse in hindsight. She turned to him. Is there anything at all they could use? He thought about it. Thought about the year after Sarah died, the drinking that got bad for a few months before Kelly staged an intervention. The night he'd gotten pulled over, blew just under the legal limit, and the cop let him go with a warning because they knew each other from high school. The times he'd lost his temper, put holes in walls, scared himself with the force of his own anger. Yeah, he said quietly, there's stuff. Tell me. So he did. All of it. Every ugly moment he'd tried to forget, every mistake he'd made in the fog of grief. Claire listened without judgment, making notes, asking clarifying questions. When he finished, she sat back. Okay. None of that is great, but none of it is disqualifying either. You never hurt Emma, never drove drunk with her in the car, never put her at risk. The drinking was 2 years ago, and you stopped. The anger management, you recognized it was a problem, and you've been working on it. That's actually a point in your favor. You think the judge will see it that way? If we frame it right, yes. You're a grieving father who struggled but sought help and got better. That's human. That's relatable. She tapped her pen against the notepad. The Prescotts will try to paint it as ongoing instability. We need witnesses who can testify to your current state, people who see you with Emma regularly, who can speak to how you've changed. Kelly, obviously Kelly, but we need more. Teachers, neighbors, Emma's friends' parents, anyone who can say Ethan Cole is a good father and Emma is thriving with him. I'll make a list. Do it tonight. Monica needs names by tomorrow afternoon. They worked until midnight, building a defense that felt simultaneously solid and fragile. Emma stirred once, called out for Ethan, and he went to her, lay beside her in the small bed until she settled back to sleep. When he came back, Claire was staring at her laptop screen with an intensity that looked painful. Go to sleep, he said. I'm fine. Claire. She looked up and he saw the exhaustion written in every line of her face. I keep thinking about what happens if we lose. If the judge sides with the Prescotts and Emma goes to live with them. She'll grow up with everything money can buy and nothing that actually matters. We're not going to lose. You don't know that. No, but I have to believe it, because if I don't, I'll fall apart. And I can't afford to fall apart right now. Claire closed her laptop slowly. How do you do that? How do you keep going when everything's stacked against you? Because the alternative is giving up, and I won't do that to Emma. He sat across from her. You asked me once why I came to that retreat. The real reason was I needed to remember how to fight. I'd been so focused on surviving that I forgot what I was surviving for. But then I met you, and you reminded me. I didn't do anything. You showed up, you listened, you gave a damn when you didn't have to. That's everything. Something shifted in the space between them, the air going thick and charged. Claire looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, and Ethan felt the distance they'd been carefully maintaining start to collapse. I should go to bed, she said, but she didn't move. Yeah. Neither of them moved. Then Claire stood abruptly, grabbed her laptop. Good night, Ethan. Good night. She disappeared into Emma's room, and Ethan sat alone in the kitchen, feeling the ghost of something that almost happened linger in the empty air. The next day, Emma met Dr. Lindholm in an office that tried very hard to look friendly and not at all intimidating. Toys scattered across the floor, bright posters on the walls, child-sized furniture mixed with adult chairs. Emma held Ethan's hand tight as they walked in. Dr. Lindholm was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She smiled at Emma. Hi. You must be Emma. Emma nodded, hiding slightly behind Ethan's leg. I'm Dr. Lindholm, but you can call me Sarah if that's easier. I talk to kids about their feelings and their families, and I play games with them to learn about what makes them happy. Does that sound okay? Another nod, less hesitant this time. Your dad's going to wait in the other room while we talk, but he'll be right there if you need him. Is that okay? Emma looked up at Ethan and he crouched down to her level. I'll be right outside. You can come get me anytime you want, okay? Okay. You're not in trouble. Sarah just wants to get to know you. Okay, Emma said again and let go of his hand. Ethan went to the waiting room where Claire sat with a coffee and her laptop. She looked up when he entered, closed the computer. How is she? Scared. But she went in. She's braver than both of us. They sat in silence, Ethan's knee bouncing, anxiety crawling under his skin. Through the wall he could hear muffled voices, Emma's high and uncertain, Dr. Lindholm's low and steady. He tried not to imagine what they were talking about, what questions Emma was answering, what conclusions were being drawn. 45 minutes later, the door opened and Emma emerged, clutching a stuffed dinosaur Dr. Lindholm had apparently given her. She ran to Ethan, climbed into his lap. How was it? He asked. Good. We played with dolls and I told her about school and about Grandma and Grandpa Prescott and about you and about the mountains, even though I wasn't there. She showed him the dinosaur. Sarah gave me this. She said velociraptors are smart and strong and brave, like me. Ethan's throat went tight. That sounds right. Dr. Lindholm appeared in the doorway. Can we talk for a minute? Ethan settled Emma with Claire, who immediately started a conversation about what to name the new dinosaur and followed Dr. Lindholm into her office. How did it go? He asked. She's a wonderful little girl, bright, articulate, emotionally intelligent for her age. Dr. Lindholm sat behind her desk, pulled up notes on her computer. She talked very openly about her life with you, about school, about her grandparents. She's clearly attached to you, feels safe with you, trusts you. But there are some signs of anxiety. She mentioned nightmares about losing you, about having to move away. She's worried about the upcoming big meeting, as she calls it. She doesn't fully understand what's happening, but she knows it's important and she's scared. Ethan felt like he'd been punched. I've tried to keep her out of it. I know. And you've done a good job. But children are perceptive. They pick up on stress even when we try to hide it. She turned the screen toward him. That said, nothing I saw suggests she'd be better off with her grandparents. In fact, when I asked her where she wanted to live, she said, with my daddy, in our apartment, forever. The words hit him hard. Relief and heartbreak tangled together. She said that? Verbatim. And then she told me about the park you take her to, and the ice cream shop, and how you do voices when you read her bedtime stories. She painted a very clear picture of a child who loves her father and feels loved by him. Will you testify to that? Yes. I'll prepare a full evaluation and be ready to testify that, in my professional opinion, Emma's best interests are served by remaining in your primary custody. She paused. But I need to warn you, the Prescotts will have their own expert who will say the opposite. It'll come down to which expert the judge finds more credible. Is there anything I can do to strengthen the case? Keep doing what you're doing. Be present, be stable, be honest, and prepare Emma as much as you can for what's coming. She needs to know that whatever happens, you love her, and you're fighting for her. When they left the office, Emma was asleep in Claire's lap, the dinosaur clutched to her chest. Claire looked up at Ethan, a question in her eyes. It went well, he said quietly. She'll testify for us. Relief flickered across Claire's face. Good, that's good. They drove home in silence, Emma still sleeping in the back seat. When they pulled up to the apartment, Claire's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then her expression went hard. When? She said. How did they… No, don't engage. I'll handle it. She hung up, stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed her. What happened? Ethan asked. The Prescotts know I'm involved. Someone saw us leaving Monica's office together, did some digging, figured out who I am. She looked at him, something like fear in her eyes. They're going to come after me. Use my past against you. Say you're associating with discredited journalists, that it shows poor judgment. Let them. I don't care. You should care. If they can make me look bad enough, it reflects on you. Makes you look desperate, unstable, willing to trust anyone who offers help. So what do we do? Claire was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she straightened and Ethan saw the fighter emerge again. We get ahead of it. We control the narrative before they can. How? I go on record. I talk to Monica, prepare a statement about why I'm helping you. I own my past, explain what happened, and make it clear that my involvement is professional consulting, not some conspiracy to manipulate the court. That's going to expose you. I know. Claire, it's already done, Ethan. They know. Now I either hide and let them define me, or I stand up and define myself. She met his eyes. I told you I was tired of being safe. I meant it. That evening, after Emma was fed and bathed and put to bed with her new dinosaur, Claire and Ethan sat with Monica on a video call, going over strategy. Monica looked tired, her office lit by harsh overhead lights. The Prescotts filed a motion this afternoon, she said. They want to compel disclosure of all communications between you and Claire, claiming she's acting as an undisclosed consultant and that her involvement constitutes improper third-party interference in a custody case. That's ridiculous, Claire said. I'm not a party to the case. I'm just helping with research, which is exactly what we'll argue. But they're going to paint this as you trying to manipulate the outcome, using your resources and connections to unfairly advantage Ethan. Monica looked at them both. How close are you two? What do you mean? Ethan asked. I mean, are you romantically involved? Because if you are, they'll use that. They'll say Claire's judgment is compromised, that this is personal, not professional, that Ethan's putting his relationship ahead of Emma's well-being. We're not together, Ethan said. We're friends, Claire added. That's all. Monica didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Fine. Then that's the line we hold. Claire is a professional consultant who offered her services because she has relevant expertise, nothing more. After the call ended, Ethan and Claire sat in the dim kitchen, not looking at each other. We're not lying, Claire said finally. We are just friends. I know. But they're going to make it into something it's not. Yeah. Does that bother you? Ethan turned to look at her, really look at her. This woman who'd upended her life for his, who'd spent every day for 2 weeks fighting battles she didn't have to fight, who looked at Emma like she mattered. What bothers me is that they're going to twist something good into something ugly. But no, you being here doesn't bother me. It's the opposite of bothering me. Claire's expression softened. We're making this harder than it needs to be. Probably. When this is over. Let's not think about when it's over. Let's just get through it first. She nodded, but something in her eyes looked sad. Okay. The next week blurred into a nightmare of preparation. Monica drilled Ethan on testimony, going over every question the Prescott's lawyers might ask, every trap they might set. Claire worked 18-hour days, building counterarguments, researching case law, preparing documents that might never get used but needed to exist just in case. Emma went to school, came home, did her homework, and pretended everything was normal, even though Ethan could see the worry in the way she clung to him before bed, the way she asked every night if he'd be there when she woke up. Always, he told her. I'll always be here. Even if I have to go live with Grandma and Grandpa? The question broke something in him. You're not going to live with them. But what if the judge says I have to? Then I'll still be here. I'll still be your dad. Nothing can change that. She thought about this, her small face serious. Claire says you're the bravest person she knows. Claire said that? Yeah. When you were in your meeting yesterday. She told me that you're fighting really hard because you love me, and that's what brave people do. Ethan felt his chest go tight. Claire's pretty smart. I like her. Is she going to stay after the meeting? I don't know, baby. Maybe. I hope she does. She's teaching me about constellations. Did you know there's one called Cassiopeia that looks like a W? I didn't know that. Well, now you do. Emma yawned, burrowed deeper into her pillow. Daddy? Yeah? I love you. I love you too, more than anything. She fell asleep holding his hand, and Ethan sat there in the dark, listening to her breathe, and prayed to whoever might be listening that he wouldn't lose this. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, running through testimony in his head. Every question Monica had prepared him for felt like a trap. Every answer felt inadequate. Around 2 a.m, Claire emerged from Emma's room. She looked as wrecked as he felt. Can't sleep either? She asked. No. She sat on the edge of the coffee table, facing him. You're going to do fine tomorrow. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you're going to walk in there and tell the truth. You're going to tell them exactly why Emma belongs with you, and they're going to see it. The judge is going to see it. What if the truth isn't enough? Then we appeal. We keep fighting. We don't stop until Emma's safe. I'm scared, he admitted. I'm terrified that I'm going to lose her, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Claire reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were cold. You're not going to lose her. You can't promise that. I know. But I can promise that whatever happens tomorrow, you're not facing it alone. I'll be right there. And if they want to come after you, they'll have to come through me first. Ethan looked at their joined hands, at this woman who'd become essential without him noticing. Why are you doing this? Really? I told you. No, the real reason. Not the one you tell yourself to justify it. Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I look at you and Emma, I see what I gave up when I stopped fighting. I see purpose and love and something worth protecting. And for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I matter again. Like what I do makes a difference. She met his eyes. You and Emma, you gave me that back. So I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me because I need this to mean something. It means everything, Ethan said. To you. To both of us. She held his gaze, and in the dim light, Ethan saw tears she was fighting to keep from falling. I'm afraid I'm going to let you down. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you've already shown up when no one else did. That's all I need. Claire squeezed his hand once, then let go. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we fight. She went back to Emma's room, and Ethan lay there alone, feeling more awake than ever. Tomorrow would either save everything or destroy it. There was no middle ground, no safety net. He thought about Emma sleeping in the next room, about the life they'd built from grief and determination, about Claire who'd appeared like some kind of answer to a question he didn't know how to ask. Tomorrow. Everything came down to tomorrow. And as the hours crawled toward dawn, Ethan Cole tried to believe they had a chance. The courthouse was everything Ethan expected and worse. Cold stone, harsh fluorescent lighting, security guards who looked at everyone like potential threats. He walked through the metal detector with Emma's hand in his, Claire beside him, Monica ahead with her briefcase and the weight of everything they'd prepared. Emma wore the dress Kelly had bought her, navy blue, sensible, the kind of thing that said responsible parenting. Her hair was in braids, her shoes polished. She looked small and scared and way too young to be walking into a courtroom. "You okay?" Ethan asked her. "My tummy hurts." "Mine too, but we're going to be okay." "Promise?" He wanted to promise. Wanted to tell her everything would be fine, that they'd go home together at the end of the day and this would all be a bad memory. But he couldn't lie to her. "I promise I love you," he said instead, "no matter what." They reached the courtroom. Through the window in the door, Ethan could see the Prescotts already seated with their legal team. 4 lawyers in expensive suits, leather portfolios open, expressions confident. Robert Prescott looked like he'd never lost anything in his life. Diane sat beside him, perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. They looked up when Ethan entered. Diane's eyes went to Emma, something soft flickering across her face before the mask returned. Robert's gaze landed on Claire, and Ethan saw recognition, calculation, dismissal. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Michaels presiding." Everyone stood. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. She took her seat, looked at both parties, and Ethan felt his future hang in the balance of whatever she was about to say. "Be seated. We're here today for the matter of custody regarding Emma Cole. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. This is going to be a long day, so let's begin." The Prescott's lead attorney stood. Marcus Chen, a man whose reputation preceded him. He'd never lost a custody case. Never. "Your Honor, we're here because Emma Cole deserves stability, security, and a future unburdened by financial stress and emotional volatility. The Prescotts can provide that. Mr. Cole, despite his good intentions, cannot." And with those words, the fight began. Marcus Chen moved like a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Confident, methodical. He laid out the Prescott's case with surgical precision. Ethan's financial records showing late rent payments, the nights he'd worked past Emma's bedtime, the incident report from the school when Emma had shown up without a lunch because Ethan forgot to pack one. Small things. Normal things. But Chen made them sound like evidence of a pattern, a slow collapse happening in real time. "Mr. Cole loves his daughter," Chen said, his voice carrying the weight of reasonable concern. "No one disputes that. But love alone doesn't provide stability. It doesn't ensure Emma has everything she needs to thrive. The Prescotts can offer her opportunities Mr. Cole simply cannot: private education, extracurricular activities, travel, cultural exposure. Most importantly, they can offer her a home free from the financial anxiety and emotional stress that currently defines her father's household." Monica stood for her opening statement, and Ethan could see the fight in her eyes, even if her budget suit couldn't compete with Chen's tailored armor. "Your Honor, this case isn't about money or opportunity. It's about a father who has loved and raised his daughter through the worst grief imaginable. Emma Cole is thriving with her father. She's happy, healthy, doing well in school, and most importantly, she wants to be with him. The Prescotts may have resources, but they don't have what Emma needs most: her dad." Judge Michaels looked between them, expression unreadable. "Mr. Chen, call your first witness." The Prescott's psychologist went first. Dr. Richard Holloway, a man in his 60s with credentials that filled half a page and a demeanor that said he'd never been wrong about anything. He took the stand, was sworn in, and proceeded to dismantle Ethan's fitness as a parent using words that sounded objective but cut like knives. "Based on my evaluation of Emma during her weekend with her grandparents, I observed signs of anxiety consistent with an unstable home environment. She exhibited hypervigilance, frequently asking about her father's whereabouts and emotional state. This suggests she's taken on an inappropriate caretaking role, worried about her parents' well-being rather than feeling secure in his ability to care for her." Monica cross-examined, but Holloway was good. He deflected, reframed, maintained that calm professional tone that made everything sound like fact rather than interpretation. "Dr. Holloway, isn't it normal for a 6-year-old to ask about her parent when she's away from them?" "Certainly, but the frequency and nature of Emma's questions went beyond normal separation anxiety. She asked multiple times per day if her father was okay, if he was happy, if he was sleeping enough. These are concerns that suggest she's internalized stress from the household. Or they suggest she's a caring child who loves her father. They could suggest that, yes, but in my professional opinion, the pattern indicates something more concerning." Ethan watched the judge's face, tried to read something in her expression. She gave nothing away. Robert Prescott testified next. He sat in the witness box like he owned it, spoke about Sarah with a grief that might have been genuine, but felt performed. My daughter was everything to us. Brilliant, compassionate, driven. We supported her in every choice, even when we disagreed with them. When she married Ethan, we welcomed him into our family. We wanted to believe he could provide for her the way she deserved. And did he? Chen asked. He tried, but Sarah carried most of the financial burden. She worked full-time while Ethan struggled to keep steady employment. After Emma was born, the strain became more visible. They argued about money frequently. Sarah confided in us that she felt overwhelmed, that she was doing everything alone. Monica stood. Objection. Hearsay. Your Honor, I'm establishing the pattern of instability that preceded Sarah's death and has only worsened since. Judge Michaels considered. I'll allow it, but be mindful, Mr. Chen. Robert continued, painting a picture of a marriage held together by Sarah's determination and falling apart in her absence. Some of it was true. They had argued about money. Ethan had struggled with steady work in those early years. But Robert made it sound like neglect, like Ethan had failed Sarah and was now failing Emma. After Sarah died, we stepped in to help. We paid for Emma's childcare, covered medical expenses, made sure she had everything she needed. We did this not to interfere, but because we could see Ethan was drowning. And he was. He missed work, showed up to school events disheveled and distracted. We were genuinely concerned for Emma's safety. And what changed? Chen asked. 6 months ago, Ethan suddenly told us our help was no longer needed, that he and Emma were fine on their own. But we could see they weren't fine. Emma looked tired, her homework was often incomplete, she'd lost weight. When we expressed concern, Ethan became defensive, even hostile. That's when we realized we had no choice but to pursue legal custody. Monica's cross-examination was sharp. Mr. Prescott, when you say Emma looked tired, did you consult her pediatrician? No, but... And when you say her homework was incomplete, did you speak with her teachers? We trusted our own observations. So you made assumptions based on what you wanted to see, not on actual evidence. We made observations based on our concern for our granddaughter's well-being. A granddaughter you see what, twice a month? We see her as often as Ethan allows, which is consistent with the custody agreement you both signed, an agreement that gave Mr. Cole primary custody and you visitation rights, rights you're now trying to overturn because he stopped accepting your financial control. Chen objected. Monica rephrased. They danced around the real issue, that this was about power, not Emma's welfare, but the judge's expression had shifted slightly, interested now, paying closer attention. Diane Prescott took the stand next, and she was harder to read than her husband. She spoke about Sarah with genuine pain, about Emma with something that looked like love but felt possessive. Emma is all we have left of our daughter. Every time we see her, we see Sarah, her smile, her curiosity, her spirit. We want to give Emma the life Sarah would have wanted for her, the life she deserves. And you don't believe Mr. Cole can provide that life? Chen asked gently. I believe Ethan is doing his best, but his best isn't enough. Emma needs structure, stability, resources. She needs a home where she doesn't have to worry about whether the rent is paid or whether her father is having a bad day. We can give her that. We can give her everything. Monica stood for cross-examination, and her voice was quieter now, more careful. Mrs. Prescott, do you love Emma? Of course I do. She's my granddaughter. And do you believe Ethan loves her? I believe he thinks he does. That's not what I asked. Do you believe Ethan Cole loves his daughter? Diane hesitated, and in that hesitation, Ethan saw the truth. She couldn't admit it, couldn't give him that. I believe he's attached to her, but love requires sacrifice, requires putting your child's needs above your own comfort. I'm not convinced Ethan understands that. He sacrifices every day. He works extra shifts to pay for her activities. He turns down social opportunities to be present for her. He spent 2 weeks at a retreat trying to become a better father for her. How is that not sacrifice? A retreat he could barely afford while Emma stayed with his sister. That's exactly the kind of choice that concerns us. The morning bled into afternoon. The Prescotts called Emma's teacher, who testified that Emma was a good student but sometimes seemed tired or distracted. They called Ethan's former employer, who confirmed he'd taken extensive leave after Sarah's death, and his performance had suffered. They built a case that sounded damning until you remembered they were talking about a man who'd lost his wife and was raising a child alone. During the lunch recess, Ethan sat in a small conference room with Monica, Claire, and Kelly. Emma was with a court-appointed guardian in another room, being kept separate from the proceedings until it was time for the judge to speak with her privately. "They're making me sound like I'm barely functional," Ethan said. "They're making you sound human," Monica corrected, which is actually playing in our favor. The judge isn't an idiot. She can see what they're doing. "Can she?" Kelly asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like they're winning." "They're not winning. They're just going first." Monica pulled out her notes. "This afternoon, we present our case. Dr. Lindholm's evaluation, your testimony, character witnesses. We show the judge who you really are, not the caricature the Prescotts are painting." Claire had been quiet, staring at her phone. Now she looked up. "They're going to call me." "What?" Ethan said. "Chen just added me to his witness list. They're going to put me on the stand and make this about my involvement, about my past, about everything I did wrong 3 years ago." "They can't do that," Kelly said. "They can, and they will. And they're going to use it to make Ethan look desperate, like he's so unstable he's relying on a disgraced journalist with questionable judgment to fight his battles." Monica swore under her breath. "Okay, we prepare for that. What's the worst they can say? That I was fired for fabricating sources, which isn't true, but was the story that got pushed. That I have a history of manipulating situations for my own benefit. That I'm inserting myself into this case for personal reasons unrelated to Emma's well-being." "Are you?" Monica asked. "Inserting myself for personal reasons?" Claire met her gaze. "Yes. But those reasons include believing Ethan is a good father and Emma belongs with him. That's what you say on the stand. Own your past, own your choices, and make it clear that your involvement here is because you believe in them, not because you're using them." The afternoon session started with Dr. Lindholm, and Ethan felt something in his chest ease as she spoke. She was everything Holloway wasn't, warm but professional, certain but not condescending. She walked through her evaluation of Emma with precision, painting a picture of a well-adjusted child who loved her father and felt secure in his care. Emma spoke very clearly about her life with her father. She described their routines, their activities together, the ways he makes her feel safe. When I asked her where she wanted to live, she didn't hesitate. She said, "With my daddy, in our apartment, forever." Those were her exact words. Chen stood for cross-examination, and Ethan could see him calculating. "Dr. Lindholm, you spent less than an hour with Emma. Is that sufficient time to make a comprehensive evaluation?" "I spent 45 minutes in direct interaction with Emma, yes. But I also reviewed her school records, spoke with her teacher, and examined the previous psychological evaluation." The evaluation conducted by Dr. Holloway, who spent comparable time with Emma and reached very different conclusions. Dr. Holloway's evaluation focused primarily on Emma's anxiety responses, which he interpreted as evidence of an unstable home. My evaluation considered those same responses in the broader context of a child who's experienced significant loss and is facing upheaval in her primary attachment relationship. Anxiety in that context is normal, not pathological. "So you're saying Dr. Holloway is wrong?" "I'm saying we interpreted the same data differently. He saw instability. I saw a child coping remarkably well with extraordinary circumstances. And Emma's statement that she wants to live with her father, couldn't that simply reflect a child's preference for the familiar, regardless of whether it's what's actually best for her?" Children Emma's age are capable of understanding their own needs and articulating their preferences. While we don't allow children to make final custody decisions, we do consider their wishes, especially when those wishes align with other indicators of their well-being. In this case, they do. Chen tried a few more angles, but Dr. Lindholm held firm. When she stepped down, Ethan felt like they'd finally landed a solid hit. Then Monica called Ethan to the stand, and his stomach turned to lead. The walk to the witness box felt impossibly long. He sat, was sworn in, and looked out at the courtroom, the Prescotts watching him with expressions that mixed pity and contempt, Emma's empty chair where she should be, but wasn't, Claire in the gallery with her hands clenched tight. Monica started with the basics. His work history, his relationship with Sarah, the early years with Emma. He answered carefully, trying to sound confident without sounding defensive. Then Monica moved to the harder questions. "Tell us about the period after Sarah's death." Ethan took a breath. "I fell apart. For months, I could barely function. Kelly had to help with everything, getting Emma to school, making sure she ate, keeping some kind of routine going. The Prescotts helped too, financially and practically. I was grateful for it because I couldn't do it alone. What changed? I got help. Started seeing a grief counselor, joined a support group for widowed parents. Slowly, I started being able to handle things again, started being present for Emma instead of just going through the motions. And about 6 months ago, I realized I didn't need the Prescotts' help anymore. Emma and I were okay. We'd found our rhythm. How did the Prescotts respond when you told them you didn't need their help? They didn't believe me. They thought I was being proud or stubborn, that I was putting Emma at risk. When I insisted we were fine, they got angry, and a week later I got the custody petition. Chen stood for cross-examination, and Ethan braced himself. Mr. Cole, you mentioned seeing a grief counselor. How long did you attend those sessions? About 8 months. And you stopped because you were cured? I stopped because I was coping better. I still have hard days, but I'm managing. Hard days where you lose your temper? Where you put your fist through walls? Ethan's jaw tightened. That's happened. Not often, and never in front of Emma. But she's heard it. She knows you have anger issues. I don't have anger issues. I have grief that sometimes manifests as anger. There's a difference. Is there? Because from Emma's perspective, hearing her father destroy property in the next room, I imagine it feels quite similar to being in danger. I've never hurt her. I would never hurt her. But you've scared her. Ethan stopped, forced himself to breathe. Yes, I've scared her, and I've apologized, and I've worked to do better. That's what parents do. We make mistakes, and we fix them. Or we recognize when we're not equipped to provide what our children need, and we let people who are better equipped step in. The Prescotts aren't better equipped. They're wealthier. That's not the same thing. Chen pulled out a document. Your financial records show you've been late on rent 4 times in the past year. You have outstanding medical bills totaling over $6,000. Your car is 15 years old and in need of repairs you can't afford. How is any of that in Emma's best interest? I pay my rent. It's sometimes late, but I pay it. The medical bills are on a payment plan. The car runs fine. We have enough. Enough? Emma's grandparents could give her more than enough. They could give her everything. Everything except what she actually needs, which is to be with her father who loves her and knows her and shows up for her every single day. A father who works irregular hours, who struggles financially, who has documented anger management issues, and who has allied himself with a consultant of questionable professional integrity. Objection, Monica said. Argumentative and inflammatory. Sustained, Mr. Chen. Rephrase or move on. Chen nodded, but the damage was done. He'd connected Claire to Ethan's supposed poor judgment, planted the seed. No further questions. Ethan stepped down feeling like he'd been flayed. He took his seat next to Monica, and she squeezed his arm once. You did fine. Better than fine. But he didn't feel fine. He felt exposed, every mistake and struggle laid bare for the judge to weigh. Kelly testified next, fierce and protective. She talked about how Ethan had rebuilt himself, how Emma thrived with him, how the Prescotts' claims of instability were exaggerated at best. Chen tried to shake her, suggesting her loyalty to her brother clouded her judgment, but Kelly didn't budge. I'm loyal to Emma, she said, and Emma belongs with her father. Emma's current teacher testified that Emma was a model student, engaged and happy, with no signs of the neglect the Prescotts claimed. A neighbor testified that she'd watched Ethan with Emma countless times and had never seen anything but love and patience. They were building a case, slowly, carefully, showing that Ethan was enough. Then Chen called Claire to the stand, and the temperature in the room dropped. She walked to the witness box with her shoulders back, that controlled mask in place, but Ethan could see the tension in her hands, the way her jaw was set. She was going into battle, and she knew the odds. Chen started slow. Miss Monroe, how do you know Ethan Cole? We met by accident at a mountain retreat 3 weeks ago. There was a double booking at the cabin. And you became friends? Yes. Quickly, it seems. You're now living in his apartment, helping with his custody case, funding expert witnesses. That's quite an investment for someone you've known less than a month. I believe in helping people when I can. Ethan needed help, and I have resources and skills that were relevant. It seemed like the right thing to do. How noble. Tell me about your career history, Ms. Monroe. Claire's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw her fingers tighten on the armrest. I was an investigative journalist for 5 years, working for several major publications. 3 years ago, I left journalism and started a consulting firm. You left journalism, or journalism left you? I was pushed out after publishing a story that powerful people didn't want published. That's one version. The other version is that you were fired for fabricating sources and manipulating evidence to support a predetermined narrative. Which version is true? The first one. I never fabricated sources. I was discredited by people who wanted to bury the story, and they succeeded. And yet you couldn't prove your innocence, couldn't fight back. You just accepted it and moved on. I chose to survive instead of destroying myself, fighting a battle I couldn't win. So when you saw Ethan Cole struggling with his own battle, you saw an opportunity to fight the fight you'd given up on before. To prove you could still take down wealthy, powerful people. No, I saw a father who deserved his daughter and a family that was using their resources to take her away from him. I chose to help because it was the right thing to do, or because you saw a chance to redeem yourself, to prove your methods work, and you didn't care if Ethan and Emma got caught in the crossfire of your personal vendetta. That's not... You've been investigating the Prescotts, haven't you? Digging into their business practices, their personal lives, looking for leverage to use against them in this custody case? Claire hesitated, and Ethan's heart sank. That second of hesitation was all Chen needed. I've done research to understand who they are and whether their claims about Ethan's fitness are credible. Research that includes accessing sealed settlement documents, contacting people bound by NDAs, and attempting to manufacture dirt on a family whose only crime is wanting to provide a better life for their granddaughter. Their crime is trying to take a child from her father using money and manipulation. Prove it. What? Prove they're manipulating anything. Prove they don't genuinely believe Emma would be better off with them. Prove that your involvement in this case is about Emma's welfare and not about your need to feel relevant again. Claire stared at him, and for the first time since she'd taken the stand, the mask cracked. I can't prove what's in their hearts, but I can prove what I've seen. I've watched Ethan Cole fight for his daughter with everything he has. I've watched him sacrifice, struggle, and show up every single day because that's what parents do. And I've watched the Prescotts use their wealth to paint him as inadequate when the truth is, he's exactly what Emma needs. Based on your extensive 3 weeks of knowing him. Based on seeing him at his worst and watching him still be enough. Chen paused, let that statement hang in the air. No further questions. Monica stood for redirect. Ms. Monroe, in your professional opinion, based on your years of investigative experience, do you believe the Prescotts' concerns about Ethan are genuine? No. I believe they're a means to an end. They want Emma, and they're willing to destroy Ethan's reputation to get her. And do you believe Ethan Cole is a fit parent? I believe he's an excellent parent. He's not perfect, but he's present. He's loving. He's exactly who Emma needs. Claire stepped down, and Ethan wanted to go to her, wanted to tell her she'd been amazing even though Chen had eviscerated her. But court was still in session, and all he could do was watch her take her seat in the gallery, her face carefully blank. Judge Michaels called for a recess. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes for my private interview with Emma. After that, I'll hear closing arguments and take this matter under advisement. The word sent ice through Ethan's veins. Under advisement meant the judge wouldn't rule today. Meant he'd have to wait, wondering if he'd lost Emma, if everything they'd done was enough. In the conference room, Monica tried to rally them. We did good. We showed the judge who Ethan really is. Now it's Emma's turn. What if she's too scared? Ethan asked. What if she doesn't say what she needs to say? Then we trust that the judge can see the truth anyway. But Emma's strong, Ethan, stronger than you think. Claire stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself. Ethan went to her, lowered his voice. You were incredible out there. I gave him exactly what he wanted, proof that I'm damaged goods with questionable judgment. You told the truth. That's all you could do. The truth doesn't always win. It has to this time. She looked at him, and in her eyes he saw all the fear she'd been hiding. What happens if we lose? We don't think about that. We don't even consider it. Ethan, no. We've done everything we can. Now we wait, and we hope, and we believe that doing the right thing matters. Claire nodded, but she didn't look convinced. 30 minutes later, Emma was brought into the judge's chambers. Ethan wasn't allowed to go with her, could only watch her disappear through the door with the court guardian, her small hand clutching that stuffed dinosaur Dr. Lindholm had given her. The waiting was agony. Monica made phone calls. Kelly paced. Claire stared at nothing. And Ethan sat with his head in his hands, trying not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. 20 minutes passed. 30. 45. Finally, the door opened and the guardian emerged. The judge is ready for closing arguments. They filed back into the courtroom. Emma wasn't with them. She'd been taken to a separate room to wait. The judge looked tired, her expression harder to read than ever. Chen stood first. Your Honor, this case is about what's best for Emma Cole. And while Mr. Cole loves his daughter, love isn't enough. Emma deserves stability, resources, opportunity. She deserves grandparents who can provide for her without the constant stress of financial strain and emotional volatility. We ask that you grant primary custody to the Prescotts with generous visitation for Mr. Cole. This isn't about taking Emma from her father. It's about giving her the life she deserves. Monica stood and her voice carried the weight of every case she'd ever fought. Your Honor, Emma Cole has a life she deserves. She has a father who shows up, who fights for her, who makes her feel loved and safe every single day. The Prescotts can offer money, but they can't offer what Emma needs most, her dad. We ask that you deny their petition and maintain the current custody arrangement, allowing Emma to stay where she belongs, with her father. Judge Michaels looked at both parties, then at her notes. I've heard compelling arguments from both sides. I've reviewed extensive documentation, and I've spoken with Emma, who is a remarkable child. She paused. I'm going to take this matter under advisement. I'll issue my ruling within 72 hours. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down like thunder. 72 hours. 3 days to wait for a decision that would change everything. Ethan stood on numb legs, watched the Prescotts file out with their legal team, saw the confidence in their posture. They thought they'd won. Maybe they had. Emma was brought back to him, and she threw herself into his arms. Did I do good, Daddy? You did perfect, baby. The judge was really nice. She asked me about school and dinosaurs and what makes me happy. What did you tell her? I told her you make me happy, and that I want to stay with you forever and ever. Ethan's throat closed up. He held her tight, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, just in case. Outside the courthouse, the sky was gray and threatening rain. Kelly hugged Emma, promised ice cream later, and left to pick up dinner. Claire stood apart from them, staring at the building like she was trying to will it to give them the answer they needed. 3 days? She said when Ethan approached. Yeah. I hate waiting. Me too. They stood in silence, Emma between them, and Ethan tried to imagine what the next 3 days would feel like. How he'd sleep. How he'd breathe. How he'd function knowing that somewhere a judge was deciding his daughter's future. Come on, Claire said finally. Let's go home. Home. The word felt both permanent and fragile. They'd built something in the past 3 weeks, a strange, imperfect family unit that somehow worked. But in 3 days, it might all fall apart. They drove in silence, Emma falling asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the stress of the day. When they reached the apartment, Ethan carried her inside, laid her on the couch. Claire moved around the kitchen making tea. Neither of them would drink, and the quiet felt suffocating. I should have done more, Claire said suddenly. I should have found better evidence, built a stronger case, something that would have made the decision obvious. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. You don't know that yet. Don't I? She turned to face him, and her eyes were red. We went up against people with unlimited resources and decades of experience winning. We brought emotion and hope and the belief that doing the right thing matters. And maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't matter enough. Claire, I can't lose this, Ethan. I can't watch them take her from you. I can't. Her voice broke, and she turned away. Ethan crossed the room, pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, shaking. I promised myself I wouldn't care this much, that I'd help and then walk away. But I can't. I can't walk away from you, from Emma, from this. And if we lose, if the judge sides with them, I don't know how to survive that. We survive it together. How? I don't know, but we will. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a world that wouldn't stop shifting, and Ethan felt something fundamental change between them. Whatever they'd been pretending this was, professional, friendly, temporary, it wasn't that anymore. Maybe it never had been. When Claire finally pulled back, her face was wet and her eyes were fierce. If we lose, we appeal. We keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. Okay, I mean it. I'm not giving up. I know, neither am I. She nodded, wiped her face. Okay, 3 days. We can survive 3 days. But as the night settled around them and Emma slept on the couch, Ethan wondered if surviving was enough. If hope could carry them through 72 hours of not knowing. If the foundation they'd built was strong enough to hold if everything came crashing down. He didn't have answers. All he had was Claire beside him, Emma safe for now, and the fragile belief that sometimes, against all odds, the right thing won. 3 days until they found out if belief was enough. The first day passed like moving through wet concrete. Emma went to school because keeping her routine normal felt important, even though nothing about the situation was normal. Ethan dropped her off, watched her disappear into the building with her backpack and her dinosaur, and felt his chest constrict with the fear that this might be one of the last times he'd do this simple thing. Claire worked from the apartment, laptop open but her eyes unfocused, staring at nothing. She'd made 17 calls by noon, none of them about the case because there was nothing left to do except wait. Ethan cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, organized drawers that were already organized, did anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from spiraling. Around 2 in the afternoon, his phone rang. Monica. Any news? He asked, not bothering with hello. Nothing yet. But I wanted to check in. How are you holding up? I'm not. That's fair. Listen, whatever happens, we fought hard. You did everything right. Doesn't feel like it. I know, but sometimes doing everything right still doesn't guarantee the outcome we want. That's the system. It's not perfect. After he hung up, Claire looked at him from across the room. She's preparing you for bad news. You don't know that. I know what lawyers sound like when they think they're going to lose. We're not going to lose. You keep saying that like saying it makes it true. What else am I supposed to do? His voice came out sharper than he intended. Give up? Accept that some judge who spent 45 minutes with Emma gets to decide she's better off with people who see her as a possession? No, but maybe stop pretending you're not terrified. I am terrified. Every second of every day I'm terrified. But if I let that fear take over, I'll fall apart. And I can't fall apart because Emma needs me to be okay. Claire stood, moved closer. Emma needs you to be human. She needs you to show her that being scared doesn't make you weak, that fighting for what matters is worth it even when you don't know if you'll win. I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. You've been doing it this whole time. They stood there inches apart, and Ethan felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. He wanted to tell her that she'd saved him, that meeting her had been the thing that made fighting feel possible again, but the words stuck in his throat, too big and too fragile for the moment. Emma came home with Kelly, chattering about a science project involving volcanoes and baking soda. She seemed lighter, like the stress of the hearing had lifted now that it was over. She didn't understand that the hard part was just beginning. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ethan found Claire on the fire escape, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city lights. You'll freeze out here, he said. Can't sleep anyway. He climbed out beside her, the metal cold through his jeans. What are you thinking about? Everything? Nothing. What I'll do if we lose. Claire. No, let me say this. If we lose, if the judge gives custody to the Prescotts, I want you to know that this wasn't for nothing. These past 3 weeks, you and Emma, you changed something in me. Reminded me who I used to be before I got scared, before I chose safety over everything else that mattered. You're not scared anymore? I'm terrified, but it's different now. I'm scared of losing something real instead of scared of risking something I never really had. She turned to look at him. Whatever happens, I'm not walking away. Even if Emma goes to the Prescotts, even if this gets ugly, I'm staying. You need to know that. Ethan reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. I was drowning before I met you. Not dramatically, just slowly sinking and pretending I was fine. You threw me a rope. More than a rope. You jumped in with me. How am I supposed to thank you for that? You don't. You just let me stay in the water with you. They sat in the cold until the early hours of morning, holding hands, not talking, just existing in the space between hope and fear. When they finally went inside, Ethan slept on the couch and Claire took Emma's room like they had every night. maintaining the careful distance even though both of them knew it was pointless. They'd already crossed whatever line they'd been trying not to cross. The second day was worse. The waiting had teeth now, sinking deeper with every hour. Ethan's phone rang constantly. Kelly checking in, Monica with non-updates, friends he hadn't talked to in months suddenly concerned. He stopped answering. Emma asked him 3 times if everything was okay, and each time he lied and said yes. By the 3rd time, she stopped believing him. "Is the judge going to send me away?" she asked that evening, while Claire was in the shower and Ethan was helping her with homework she couldn't focus on. "No, baby, you're staying right here." "But what if she says I have to go live with Grandma and Grandpa?" "Then we'll figure it out, but that's not going to happen." "You don't know that." She was right, and hearing his own fear reflected in her 6-year-old voice broke something in him. He pulled her into his lap, held her tight. "You're right, I don't know. But I know I love you more than anything in the world, and I know I'm going to keep fighting for you no matter what any judge says, okay?" "Okay," she whispered into his shoulder. "I love you too, Daddy." Later, after Emma was asleep, Claire found him sitting in the dark kitchen. She didn't turn on the light, just sat across from him. "She's scared," Ethan said. "Kids are perceptive." "I told her everything would be okay. I lied to her." "You gave her hope. That's not the same as lying." "Feels the same right now." Claire reached across the table, found his hand in the darkness. "Tomorrow. One more day. And then we know. And then we know." But knowing felt more terrifying than waiting. The 3rd day arrived with gray skies and rain that matched Ethan's mood. He got Emma ready for school on autopilot, made her lunch, kissed her goodbye. She clung to him longer than usual at the school door. "I'll see you this afternoon," he promised. "You'll be here?" "I'll be here. I'm always here." She nodded and let go, and he watched her walk into the building, memorizing the way her backpack bounced with each step. Back at the apartment, Claire was already awake, coffee made, phone in hand. "Monica says the ruling could come any time today. Judge's clerk will call her, she'll call us. So we just wait. We just wait." They tried to be normal. Ate breakfast they didn't taste, watched television neither of them saw, made conversation that died mid-sentence. The minutes dragged like hours. At 11:30, Monica called. Ethan's hands shook as he answered. "Tell me." "The clerk just called. Judge Michaels is ready. She wants everyone back in court at 2 o'clock to hear her ruling." What does that mean? Is that good or bad?" "It means she's made a decision and she wants to deliver it in person." "Which is actually standard, Ethan. Try not to read anything into it." But how could he not? 2 o'clock? 2.5 hours to wait for his entire world to either stay intact or shatter. He hung up, looked at Claire. 2 o'clock. She nodded, already standing, already moving. "I'll call Kelly. She can pick up Emma from school." "I want Emma there." "Ethan, if the judge is taking her away from me, I want to be able to say goodbye. I want her to know I fought until the last second." Claire's eyes went wet, but she didn't argue. "Okay. I'll tell Kelly to bring her." The hours crawled. Ethan showered, dressed in the one suit he owned that still fit, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. It felt like putting on armor made of grief. Claire wore the same clothes she'd worn to the hearing, that controlled elegance that made her look untouchable even though Ethan knew better now. They drove to the courthouse in silence, Emma between them in the back seat, holding both their hands. "What's happening?" Emma asked. "The judge is going to tell us her decision," Ethan said. "And then I get to stay with you?" "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." The courtroom felt different this time. Smaller, maybe, or just heavier with the weight of what was about to happen. The Prescotts were already there, Robert in another perfect suit, Diane with her hands folded, their lawyers looking confident in that way that made Ethan's stomach turn. Monica met them outside. "Whatever happens, stay calm. Don't react. Let me handle any follow-up." "What if she rules against me?" "Then we appeal. We file immediately. We don't stop." "How long does an appeal take?" Monica hesitated. "Months. Maybe longer." Months of Emma living with the Prescotts while they fought to get her back. Months of her learning to live without him, maybe forgetting what it felt like to be his daughter. "All rise." They stood. Judge Michaels entered, took her seat, looked at everyone with that same unreadable expression. Ethan felt Claire's hand find his under the table, squeezing tight. "Please be seated," the judge said. "I've carefully considered all testimony, evidence, and my conversation with Emma. This is not an easy decision. Both parties clearly care about Emma's well-being, though they disagree about what that well-being requires." She paused, looked directly at Ethan, then at the Prescotts. The Prescotts argue that Emma needs financial stability, educational opportunities, and a home free from the stress of economic uncertainty. These are valid concerns. Children do benefit from stability and resources. However, the law is clear that custody decisions must be based on the child's best interests, not on which party has more money or can provide more material advantages. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he could barely hear over it. Mr. Cole is not a perfect parent. He has struggled financially. He has had moments of anger and emotional difficulty. But he has also shown remarkable resilience, sought help when needed, and maintained a loving, stable home for his daughter. The testimony from Emma's teacher, from Dr. Lindholm, and from Emma herself paints a clear picture of a child who is thriving with her father. The judge shifted her attention to the Prescotts. Mr. and Mrs. Prescott love their granddaughter, that's evident, but their petition appears motivated more by a desire to control Emma's upbringing than by genuine concerns about her safety or well-being. The evidence of Mr. Cole's unfitness is circumstantial at best and does not rise to the level required to remove a child from a capable, loving parent. Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Therefore, the petition for custody modification is denied. Primary custody remains with Ethan Cole. The existing visitation schedule for the Prescotts will continue as previously ordered. The gavel came down, and the world snapped back into focus. He'd won. Emma was his. She launched herself at him before he could process it, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Does that mean I get to stay?" "Yeah, baby, you get to stay." Behind them, Diane Prescott made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Robert's face had gone stone cold, his jaw tight. Their lead attorney was already gathering papers, preparing to leave, probably already planning the appeal Monica had warned about. But right now, in this moment, Ethan had won. Judge Michaels wasn't finished. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, I understand this is disappointing, but I encourage you to work with Mr. Cole to maintain a healthy relationship with Emma. She benefits from having her grandparents in her life. Don't let this legal battle destroy that." Diane stood, her composure cracking. She looked at Emma, then at Ethan, and for just a second he saw genuine grief in her eyes. Could I say goodbye?" Ethan looked down at Emma, who nodded. He let her go, watched her walk to her grandmother. Diane knelt down, pulled Emma into a hug that looked desperate. "I love you, sweetheart. So much." "I love you too, Grandma. You can still come visit us, right?" Emma looked back at Ethan, uncertain. He nodded. "Of course she can. That hasn't changed." Robert stood stiffly, didn't approach. But when Emma went to him, he softened slightly, put a hand on her head. "Be good for your father." "I will." They left without another word, their lawyers trailing behind them. The courtroom emptied, and Ethan stood there with Emma, Claire, Kelly, and Monica, trying to believe it was real. "You did it," Monica said. "I wasn't sure, but you did it." "We did it," Ethan corrected, looking at Claire. She was crying, not hiding it, not trying to control it, just letting tears stream down her face. Emma ran to her, hugged her legs. "Why are you crying? We won." "I know, sweetheart. Sometimes people cry when they're happy." "That's weird." "Yeah," Claire laughed wetly. "It really is." Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray but breaking up, hints of blue showing through. Kelly took Emma for ice cream to celebrate, leaving Ethan and Claire standing on the steps. "I can't believe it's over," Ethan said. "It's not over. They'll appeal. Let them. We'll fight that too." "We will," Claire agreed. "Together." He turned to look at her, this woman who'd appeared in his life by complete accident and changed everything. "I need to ask you something, okay? That first night in the cabin when you offered to share the bed, did you know this would happen, that we'd end up here?" Claire smiled slightly. "I knew you were someone worth knowing. I didn't know you'd become someone I couldn't imagine living without." "Claire, I'm staying, Ethan. Not just for the appeal, Not just until things settle down. I'm staying because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, you and Emma became my family. And I don't walk away from family. He kissed her then, right there on the courthouse steps, with the broken sky above them and the weight of the world finally lifted from his shoulders. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to frame his face, and it felt like the first honest thing that had happened in months. When they broke apart, she was smiling. We should probably go get Emma before Kelly gives her so much ice cream she gets sick. Probably. But they stood there another moment, just breathing, just being, letting the reality of what they'd won settle around them. They found Kelly and Emma at the ice cream shop 3 blocks away. Emma had chocolate smeared on her face and was explaining her theory about why Triceratops were actually the best dinosaurs to an amused Kelly. "There you two are," Kelly said, giving them both a knowing look. "We were about to send a search party." "We were just talking," Ethan said. "Sure you were." Kelly stood, ruffled Emma's hair. "I'm going to head out. You guys celebrate. You earned it." After she left, they sat with Emma, watched her demolish a second scoop of ice cream, and tried to remember what normal felt like. Emma talked constantly about school, about her friends, about the science project that was due next week, and could they please get the supplies tonight? "Absolutely," Ethan said. "Whatever you need." "Can Claire help? She's good at science stuff." "I'm actually not," Claire said, "but I'll try." "That's okay. Daddy's not good at it either, but we figure it out together." Something about that simple statement hit Ethan hard. We figure it out together. That's what they'd been doing all along, fumbling through impossible situations, making mistakes, getting back up. And somehow, it had been enough. That night, back at the apartment, they built a volcano on the kitchen table while Emma directed them like a tiny drill sergeant. Claire mixed baking soda and vinegar while Ethan shaped modeling clay, and when the volcano finally erupted, Emma shrieked with joy. "That was awesome! Can we do it again?" "Tomorrow," Ethan promised. "Tonight you need to get ready for bed." Emma groaned but complied, heading to the bathroom to brush her teeth. When she was out of earshot, Claire turned to Ethan. "This is nice." "What?" "This. Normal. Just being a family without the weight of everything else." "It is nice. Think we can keep it?" "I don't know, but I'd like to try." Emma emerged in her pajamas, climbed into Ethan's lap. "Will you read to me?" "Always." They settled on the couch, Emma between them, and Ethan read from her current favorite book about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Claire listened, her shoulder pressed against his, and somewhere in the middle of chapter 3, Emma fell asleep. "We should move her to bed," Claire whispered. "In a minute." They sat there, Emma's warm weight against them, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. Not perfect, not complete, but real and solid and worth holding on to. He carried Emma to bed, tucked her in with her dinosaur, kissed her forehead. "Love you, baby." "Love you too, Daddy," she mumbled, already mostly asleep. Back in the living room, Claire had cleaned up the volcano supplies and was standing by the window looking out at the city. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm thinking about what happens next. The appeal, the Prescotts, all of it. They won't give up easily. Neither will we." "No, but it's going to be hard. They'll dig deeper, push harder, and I need you to be prepared for that." "I am prepared. I have you." She turned to face him. "What if having me makes it worse? What if they use our relationship against you? Say you're putting me ahead of Emma? Then we prove them wrong. We show them that having you in our lives makes us stronger, not weaker. You have a lot of faith in us. I have faith in what we've already survived. Everything else is just details." Claire crossed the room, took his hands. "I'm scared I'm going to mess this up, that I'm going to let you down." "You won't." "You don't know that." "Yeah, I do. Because even if things get hard, even if we make mistakes, we'll figure it out. That's what people who love each other do." She stared at him, and he saw the moment the words registered. "You love me?" "I think I've loved you since you offered to share that bed and didn't make me feel like an idiot for refusing. You saw me at my worst and didn't run. How could I not love you?" "Ethan, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." "No, it's not that. It's just, I haven't said those words to anyone in so long. I don't know if I remember how." "Then don't say them. Show me. Stay. Fight with me. Be Emma's, whatever you want to be. That's enough." Claire pulled him closer, rested her forehead against his. I love you, both of you. I didn't want to, I tried not to, but I do. And it's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to figure it out with you. They kissed again, slower this time, deeper. And when they finally broke apart, Ethan felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in years. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Emma went to school, Ethan worked at the garage, Claire consulted from the apartment and slowly started taking on projects that mattered again. Investigations into corporate corruption, environmental violations, the kind of work she'd abandoned 3 years ago. The Prescotts didn't file an appeal. Their lawyers sent a letter saying they'd reconsidered, that they wanted to maintain their relationship with Emma without further legal action. Diane called one evening and asked if Emma could come for the weekend. Ethan hesitated, but Claire squeezed his hand. Let her go. They're her grandparents. She loves them. What if they try something? Then we deal with it. But I don't think they will. I think they're tired too. He was right. Emma came back from the weekend happy, talking about the museum Diane had taken her to and the books Robert had bought her. The Prescotts were different now, less controlling, more careful. They'd learned something from losing. 3 months after the hearing, Claire moved her things into the apartment officially. Emma helped her unpack, claimed one of the boxes as a fort, and declared it the best day ever. Does this mean Claire's staying forever? She asked Ethan that night. Would you like that? Yeah, she teaches me cool stuff and she makes you smile. I like it when you smile. Me too, baby. 6 months later, Ethan's lease was up and they moved to a bigger place. Still modest, still in the same neighborhood, but with an extra bedroom and a small yard where Emma could play. Claire paid for half, wouldn't let Ethan argue about it. We're a family, she said. Families share. A year after they met, Claire published her first investigative piece in 3 years. An expose on pharmaceutical price manipulation that named names and didn't pull punches. It won an award. The Prescott's company wasn't named, but everyone in the industry knew. Claire sent Diane a copy with a note. The truth matters. Thank you for reminding me. Diane sent flowers back. No note needed. Emma turned 8, then 9. She stopped asking if Ethan was okay, stopped worrying about custody and judges and losing the people she loved. She grew confident, curious, brave. She still loved dinosaurs, but had added astronomy and marine biology to her interests. She called Claire by her first name for a while, then one day started calling her mom too, casual as anything, like it had always been that way. Claire cried about it for an hour. Happy tears, she explained to a confused Emma. The weird kind. Ethan proposed on a Tuesday night, nothing fancy. Just the 3 of them at home, Emma already asleep. He'd bought a ring he could actually afford, nothing flashy. Claire said yes before he finished asking. I was starting to think you'd never ask, she said. I wanted to make sure you knew what you were getting into. I've known since the cabin. I've always known. They got married at the courthouse with Emma as the flower girl and Kelly as the witness. Monica showed up uninvited with a bottle of champagne. Even Diane and Robert sent a card with a generous check they didn't need but accepted gracefully. Life wasn't perfect. Ethan still had bad days when the grief over Sarah hit him sideways. Claire still sometimes woke up at 3 in the morning, panicked about deadlines or stories or the fear that she'd lose this fragile good thing they'd built. Emma had nightmares sometimes, usually about the custody hearing, about being taken away. But they figured it out together. Always together. 2 years after the courthouse steps, Ethan stood in Emma's doorway watching her sleep. She was 10 now, tall for her age, still clutching that dinosaur from Dr. Lindholm like it was precious. Claire appeared beside him, slipped her hand into his. What are you thinking about? She whispered. How different everything is from that day I showed up at the cabin, how close I came to losing this. But you didn't, because you showed up, because you cared when you didn't have to. I had to. The universe put me there for a reason. You believe in that? The universe having a plan? I believe in choosing to show up. I believe in fighting for what matters. I believe that sometimes 2 broken people find each other at exactly the right moment and build something better than what they lost. Ethan pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. You know what I learned from all of this? What? That being enough has nothing to do with money or perfection or having all the answers. It's about showing up. It's about fighting even when you're scared. It's about loving someone so much that giving up isn't an option. Is that what you did? It's what we did. All of us. They stood there in Emma's doorway, watching her breathe, and Ethan thought about the man he'd been 3 years ago, drowning, desperate, convinced he wasn't enough and never would be. That man had been wrong. Love had been enough. Fight had been enough. Hope, stubborn and foolish and refusing to die, had been enough. And standing there with Claire beside him and Emma safe in her bed, Ethan Cole finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell him all those years ago. Life wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, about showing up, even when showing up was the hardest thing in the world. He'd shown up for Emma every single day. Claire had shown up for both of them when they needed her most. And together, they'd built something that no amount of money or power could take away. A family. Imperfect and scarred and absolutely real. That was enough. It had always been enough.